Chapter 717. The first time they sneaked into Koenigsha Pharmaceuticals, Tan Xiao and Mo Awe didn't even enter the innermost sentry post. This time, however, Tan Xiao temporarily refined 10 invisibility talismans and still didn't encounter any obstruction as they came to the innermost sentry post. Bam, bam, bam. The 6 vigilant security guards outside the sentry post were instantly knocked out by Jin Shi and the others. Tan Xiao unleashed his Bloodguzzler dagger and instilled his primal chaos force into it to cut the iron gate lightning fast. It was as easy as cutting tofu, and the entire heavy iron gate was cut open. As the 11 people entered the building, a number of red alarm lights flashed and issued buzzing sounds inside. Take some men to clean up the trash upstairs. Remember, try not to kill them if you can. Just knock them out, ordered Tan Xiao. Understood. Mo Awe agreed and led the 4 experts up the stairs. Standing in front of the elevator, Tan Xiao coldly stared at the elevator door. Something happened outside and even the alarm went off, so Tan Xiao guessed that someone would definitely rush out. Sure enough, the elevator door suddenly opened half a minute later as 6 men in black armor and wielding nearly 2-meter-long sabers rushed out lightning fast. Alert! The first man who rushed out exuded a fierce aura. He was stunned after rushing out of the elevator door. Through the internal inspection, there should be a lot of intruders outside the elevator door, so how come there was no one here? However, as Xie Jiqiang's golden hatchet man, his vigilance was still very high. Tan Xiao crossed his arms and stood in front of the first man. Looking at his vigilant eyes, Tan Xiao fiercely punched the man's forehead. Although the man was wearing a helmet, the huge force still dented the helmet and hit his temple. Bam! The armored man fell to the ground, but he wasn't killed by the tremendous force. Just as Jin Shi and the others instantly attacked the other 5 armored men, the man who was knocked down by Tan Xiao shook his head with difficulty and used his arms to prop himself up. Interesting. Tan Xiao stepped on the armored man's back and pressed him to the ground. Then he sneered and said, "You're quite strong to be able to withstand my heavy punch. The armor's defensive capabilities are pretty good, but it's a pity that it looks a little out of place on you guys." In just a dozen seconds, the other 5 armored men were knocked unconscious by Jin Shi and the others. Jin Shi then kicked the armored man Tan Xiao was stepping on and asked, "This elevator should lead to the underground, boss. Are we going down?" "Go down." Tan Xiao strode into the elevator, and the others quickly entered, blocking Tan Xiao inside. As the elevator descended, the doors opened after more than 10 seconds. When the dozen or so armored men outside the elevator noticed Tan Xiao and the others, the ones at the front were the first to attack. Puff, puff, puff. Several flying swords were summoned, and with a flash of sword light, the hard armor was easily cut open. 4 or 5 armored men were killed in an instant. The underground space was very large. In addition to the 2 relatively large halls, there were also more than a dozen spacious rooms. In the innermost monitoring room, Xie Jiqiang and Austin Cole had reached an agreement. More than 20 minutes ago, Austin Cole had contacted the European HQ and ordered the head of the SOE finance department to transfer $1 billion to Xie Jiqiang's Swiss bank account. At this moment, Austin Cole's expression was extremely ugly. He had always been known for his fierceness and cruelty, but now, a murderous aura was surging all over his body as he stared fiercely at the monitor screen. The screen showed the scene of the armored men being killed one after another outside the elevator. "Xie Jiqiang, haven't your armored warriors undergone genetic modification and become very powerful? Why can the enemy kill them so easily? Look clearly, the enemy isn't using guns at all. They're using swords. That's right, the ancient weapon that only barbarians use is a sword." Austin Cole turned around and roared angrily. Xie Jiqiang's complexion was livid, and his eyes flickered with a pondering look. He didn't know the origin of these people, but he was very clear about one thing. Given the enemy's strength, the underground base that he thought to be incomparably solid would never be able to stop their footsteps. For now, there was only one way to go. He took the gene particles and the 4 most outstanding genetic warriors under him and fled far away. Immediately send some people to collect the core research data and gather at the third exit as fast as possible. Activate the self-destruct system and set the countdown to 3 minutes. The enemy is very strong, so there's no need for us to tangle with them here. Evacuate first and find a way to figure out their identity later. Xie Jiqiang suddenly got up and walked outside while solemnly ordering. Austin Cole's face was full of anger as he strode to the door. He quickly pulled out his pistol and pointed it at Xie Jiqiang's head, shouting, "Xie Jiqiang, I seriously suspect that you're trying to cheat us. We've bought all the gene particles and research data, and you obviously have a backup copy." Xie Jiqiang furrowed his brows and coldly said, "Please pay attention to your words and actions, Mr. Cole. If I really wanted to cheat you, I would have already sent people to kill you when the SOE company gave me the money instead of waiting until now. Those who were killed outside were my men, experts I trained using gene particles. Aside from the gene particles I used on them, I also made tailor-made armors for them. Do you know how much it costs to make just one set of armor? The total value of a set of armor is $4 million. Just look at how much I've lost." Austin Cole was shaken. He also felt that Xie Jiqiang didn't need to play such a trick if he wanted to cheat them. After all, those genetic warriors were very powerful and loyal subordinates of Xie Jiqiang who had gone through fire and water with him. Rather than using their lives to put on a show, it was better to use them to kill him. After thinking it through, he put away his pistol. And the moment he turned to look at the surveillance screen, a sharp dagger directly pierced through the side of his neck. It was Xie Jiqiang who acted. At this moment, his face was full of killing intent as he shouted in a deep voice, "Kill all the people from the SOE company." Bang, 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 gunshots sounded, but none of the bullets hit anyone. It was Austin Cole's men who opened fire, but in less than 2 seconds, they had already been hit by sharp daggers and knives. A Ming and a Chang quickly killed 8 or 9 of Austin Cole's men and picked up the 2 suitcases they were carrying. Xie Jiqiang squatted down and patted Austin Cole, who was clutching his neck and twitching. Then he sneered and said, "I don't need to kill you if there were no foreign enemies invading. But you think I'm cheating you, so I'll be sorry if I don't fulfill your wish. If you die, I can shift the blame for your death onto the invaders. It can be considered as taking the blame for me." Calling boss. Calling boss. The self-destruct system has been activated and will explode in 3 minutes. A deep voice came from the walkie-talkie on a Ming's shoulder. Xie Jiqiang abruptly got up and directly trampled Austin Cole to death. Then he said in a deep voice, "Notify the others to evacuate to the third exit immediately. Tell the people outside to prepare the vehicles and leave this place as fast as possible." Outside the elevator of the underground base, Tan Xiao, Jin Shi, and the others didn't show any mercy this time and killed more than a dozen armored men in just 20 seconds. As dozens of big men in black suits rushed out of the corridor inside with guns, Jin Shi and the others quickly dispersed, each looking for a bunker to attack. Ice needles. Tan Xiao didn't evade and cast a spell to condense ice needles out of thin air. Every black-suited big man who appeared was pierced by the ice needles. As they quickly advanced inside, dozens of big men in black suits were all killed. Suddenly, 2 burly men with shaved heads appeared in the corridor ahead. The 2 sides suddenly encountered each other and the 2 bald men instantly pounced on Jin Shi's group at the front. While they were sprinting, they had already pulled out their sharp daggers. Jin Shi and the others secretly sneered and controlled their flying swords to sweep the 2 bald men. They were originally determined to kill them, but the 2 bald men instantly dodged it. "Trespassers, die." One of the bald men with a scar on his face grinned and brandished his dagger to stab Jin Shi's face. However, just as the dagger was only a dozen centimeters away from Jin Shi's eyes, 2 ice needles instantly pierced his eye sockets. "Aya!" A mournful scream came out of the bald man's mouth and he instantly retracted his fierce attack. As he subconsciously dodged, a flying sword came flying from behind and pierced his waist. Tan Xiao's face turned cold and he shouted in a deep voice, "Go all out in the fight." Jin Shi and the others looked ashamed and immediately put away their feelings of being rivals in love. They controlled their flying swords to form a sword array and killed the other bald man. 2 minutes later, Tan Xiao, along with Jin Shi and the others, had arrived at the third exit. Tan Xiao had already guessed that Xie Jiqiang was responsible for the tragic death of Austin Cole and his men, but he didn't have the slightest pity for them. Looking at the closed exit, he sneered and unleashed his blood-guzzler dagger again to cut the entire door. Xie Jiqiang came out of a factory inside Kanaksha Pharmaceuticals with more than a dozen of his men. A sneer appeared on his face as he walked toward the outside of the factory and asked in a deep voice, "Have a Feng and Xiangzi come out yet?" "I'm afraid they can't come out." A Ming shook his head. Killing intent surged in Xie Jiqiang's eyes as he said, "There's less than a minute left before the underground base explodes. Since they can't come out, then let those enemies be buried with them. Have you brought out all the information and gene particles?" "Yes, I have." A Ming nodded. Vroom, vroom, vroom. 6 SUVs quickly stopped outside the factory, and there was only one driver in each car. They were the people arranged by Xie Jiqiang to meet them at the third exit. They could evacuate Xie Jiqiang as fast as possible once something happened in the underground base. Chapter 7:18. Xie Jiqiang was a very cautious person. No one cherished his life more than him unless it was a last resort. The moment he withdrew from the underground base, he didn't relax at all since he didn't know whether the enemy had found the third exit or were trying to destroy the closed door. However, when he saw the roar of the 6 SUVs' engines coming to an end as they steadily stopped outside the factory's entrance, he finally felt relieved. The company had a side door that few people even knew about. Even if the enemy blocked the company's entrance, it wouldn't affect him from leaving. Xie Jiqiang stopped in front of the door. He turned his head to look at the warehouse and muttered to himself, "This place will soon turn into hell on earth. You dare to covet my research results? Death is what you deserve." After saying that, 2 cold breaths came out of his nostrils as he turned around to board the SUV in the middle. Ming had been following Xie Jiqiang the whole time. The moment he opened the door for Xie Jiqiang, a strong sense of danger exploded in his heart. Nearly in a flash, he stomped his feet and directly threw Xie Jiqiang backward. Streams of saber light descended from the sky like the Milky Way, looking somewhat dazzling under the starlight. The 6 jeeps were suddenly struck by the saber lights and exploded with a loud bang. Immediately after, the flames splashed on the broken mailboxes and instantly engulfed the 6 cars. Mo, along with 4 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall, whizzed down from the sky. Taking advantage of the time when the SUVs exploded and burned, affecting Xie Jiqiang's men, the 5 of them dashed lightning fast and killed 5 or 6 people in just a few breaths. "Fuck off." Liang's muscles tensed up. He had been injected with gene particles and transformed into a genetic warrior. Whether it was his strength or speed, it was something unimaginable even in his dreams. At this moment, he could feel power gushing out from all over his body like a spring. He didn't even take out a weapon and directly punched Mo. In his view, although Mo and his men appeared in such a powerful way, they should have used some powerful weapons. He firmly believed that he could easily kill these enemies if it was a frontal confrontation. Mo neither dodged nor retreated. He punched out fiercely. The moment his fist collided with Liang's, the flying sword flew out of his fist and instantly tore Liang's fist apart. It even went along his arm and directly split Liang in half from the side. Boss said that we have to kill the enemy in the most concise way, with the fastest attack. Kill the enemy and spare Xie Jiqiang's life. The other 4 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall controlled their flying swords to form a sword array and quickly reaped the lives of everyone except Xie Jiqiang and Ming. The 6 black suitcases fell to the ground one after another. Shio, 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 shio. One after another, ghostly figures dashed out of the factory. The moment Tan Xiao waved his arms, a layer of bone-chilling mist appeared out of thin air and covered the burning jeep. In just 6 or 7 breaths, the burning jeep was covered by a thin layer of ice, and the flames were completely extinguished. "Boss." A few seconds later, a middle-aged man flashed out and stood in front of Tan Xiao. He respectfully said, I've dismantled the self-destruct device. The underground base can be preserved. Xie Jiqiang, who had just crawled up from the ground, stared fixedly at Tan Xiu and the others under Ah Ming's protection. But upon hearing the words of the Everlasting Feast Hall's expert, he still cried out in disbelief, "That's impossible. No one can dismantle or stop the self-destruct system once it's activated. I spent a lot of money to buy this self-destruct system from the most black-hearted arms dealer in Country D." The middle-aged man shot a cold look at Xie Jiqiang and sneered, "Others may not be able to do it, but I can. It's because I developed this self-destruct system during my training in a training camp in Country D. All the programming and codes were personally written by me. 2 of the loopholes were also covered up by me." Xie Jiqiang's body trembled. His pupils shrunk as he screamed in horror, you're Xue Sha? Damn it. How come the famous Xue Sha came to China? And he also has a boss?" Xue Sha no longer paid attention to Xie Jiqiang and looked at Tan Xiu again. Tan Xiu nodded and smilingly said, "I was worried that there would be a big mess, but it seems that there won't be a problem now. You've done a good job. You'll be rewarded when you go back." Having said that, his eyes fell on Xie Jiqiang's face and smilingly said, "I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time, Boss Xie." Xie Jiqiang felt that Tan Xiu was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. He hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Who are you?" "You're very capable, so you deserve to know my name," Tan Xiu said with a smile. "I'm Tan Xiu." Xie Jiqiang's expression moved and blurted out, "The young divine Dr. Tan Xiu? The magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss?" "Well, it's easy since you know me," Tan Xiu said with a smile. "I'm very grateful for the gene particles you've developed. But once this thing is spread out, it will definitely bring great changes to the world's situation. Hence, I need to take care of this thing for you. Do you have any objections? Just say it if you want to rob me. Why do you have to act like a whore and put up a memorial arch?" Xie Jiqiang angrily said. "Aren't you afraid of death?" Tan Xiu asked with a smile. Xie Jiqiang stared blankly for a moment and his expression immediately turned very ugly. He had no choice but to bow his head under the eaves. He was indeed afraid of death. Yet, he had spent many years and invested a lot of money to develop it, yet it was snatched away just like that. He was so distressed that he could hardly breathe. This was the first time. His anger overcame his fear, so he didn't bow his head in front of Tan Xiu. "If my guess is correct, Austin Cole of the SOE company came to Shanghai to trade with you, no?" Tan Xiu said with a smile. "He sneaked into Shanghai and committed many murders in order to deceive people, trying to divert the attention of the State Security Department and the police. This account is also on your head, isn't it?" Xie Jiqiang didn't deny it. He knew that he wouldn't be able to escape today no matter what he said. "I can spare your life if you can help me swindle some money from the SOE company," said Tan Xiu again. "How about this deal?" Xie Jiqiang shot a deep look at Tan Xiu and suddenly asked, "You really don't want to spread the existence of the gene particle? You really don't want to use it to make money?" "Absolutely not." Tan Xiu shook his head. "I see." Xie Jiqiang let out a bitter smile. "To tell you the truth, the SOE company has transferred $1 billion to my anonymous account in a Swiss bank, but I'll never give it to you. I'm still alive and there's a possibility that the gene particle will leak out. Perhaps you've already sentenced me to death in your heart, right? Because only a dead man can keep a secret forever." Tan Xiu was silent for a moment before he slowly nodded and said, "You guessed it right. It's a pity that a talent like you will die tonight." Xie Jiqiang turned to look at Mo Au and the other experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall and sneered, "The value of the gene particle is absolutely immeasurable with money. Having it is equal to having money, power, and status. Even if you use it on yourself, you'll still have formidable power. Do you really think that the news won't leak out with so many men coming to rob it? Men die for wealth, just as birds die for food. Maybe some of your men will sell you out for the gene particle." Tan Xiu sneered, whereas Mo Au and the other 10 experts also showed a disdainful expression. "I thought you were very smart, but I didn't expect you to say something so stupid." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, Haven't you realized something since we started fighting tonight? What is it? Xie Jiqiang frowned. Tan Xiao crooked his finger and the blood-guzzler dagger rotated around his finger. With a thought, the dagger flashed a bloody light as it pierced Ming's throat and pierced his heart from behind. In less than a second, the dagger floated back to Tan Xiao's finger. Genetic warriors are nothing but a joke to us. Those armored warriors of yours and those 4 very strong men should be using gene particles, right? They've become very strong, but they're nothing in front of us. It's just like pinching an ant to death. All right. I'll give up on extorting some money to keep this place a secret. You can die now. The blood-guzzler dagger flashed and disappeared. After killing Xie Jiqiang, Tan Xiao ordered, I'll give you half an hour to clean up all the security guards outside. Also, clean up the entire underground base again. Don't leave any evidence of murder. Understood. The 11 people, including Mo, instantly disappeared. For them, destroying corpses and erasing traces was definitely a grandmaster's skill. In less than half an hour, all the corpses had been disposed of and all the traces of fighting had been erased. Even the explosives installed in the underground base had been gathered. Boss, there are too many prohibited things in the base. I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to get them out quietly. Mo came to Tan Xiao with an awkward expression. Tan Xiao pondered for a moment. He then flipped his hand and took out an interspatial ring. He handed it to Mo and said, drop your blood on it to recognize the owner. This ring will be yours later. You'll have to work a few more times to quietly get the things in the underground base as well as the explosives out. An interspatial ring? Mo's heart trembled and his eyes looked ecstatic. He knew about interspatial rings. He also knew that the boss, the little boss, Guyan, Elder Ji, and the others all had interspatial rings. Although he also fantasized about getting one, he didn't expect to get one so quickly. The others around looked envious. Although they also wanted an interspatial ring, no one dared to mention it to Tan Xiao. After all, an interspatial ring was not a common object. It was a treasure in the eyes of countless cultivators. Chapter 719. Looking at everyone's expression, Tan Xiao lightly smiled and said, as long as you work hard, I'll give each of you an interspatial ring when you reach the late stage of Golden Core. Thank you, boss. Jean Shi and the other 9 looked pleasantly surprised and cupped their fists to express their gratitude. The smile on Tan Xiao's face turned a bit brighter. Although refining an interspatial ring required several precious materials, among which the void crackstone was very difficult to find, the Everlasting Feast Hall had recently purchased a lot of precious ores. He found that they had bought more than a dozen fist-sized void crackstones from the list of materials Gu Xiaoxue sent him. At this moment, it was a good opportunity to win people's hearts, and he didn't want to waste it. Tan Xiao had already packed all the suitcases that Xie Jiqiang was going to take away into his interspatial ring. After Mo packed all the prohibited items and explosives in the underground base into his interspatial ring, everyone silently left with the help of the invisibility talisman. Although gunshots were heard inside, they were tens of meters deep underground and couldn't be heard from the outside. Hence, the brutal massacre was not known by outsiders. However, the burning of the 6 SUVs still attracted the attention of some people nearby, such as the people from the National Intelligence Department. Chen Bing. He was the frontline soldier fighting in the intelligence network. He had carried out many missions overseas and had achieved excellent results. Not long ago, he was transferred back to the country. Due to the many tragedies in Shanghai, he was transferred here. After his investigation, he had determined that Koenigsha Pharmaceuticals, a subsidiary of the Mind Assembly Technology, was a major suspect. It was likely to be the hiding place of the number 3 leader of a foreign SOE company, Austin Cole. Have you contacted that mouse guy? Standing at the entrance of Koenigsha Pharmaceuticals, Chen Bing looked at the vigilant eyes of the 4 ordinary security guards and asked the person next to him. Not yet. He seems to have vanished from the face of the earth. We can't find him. Keep looking. Be sure to contact him. Chen Bing said and turned to the car parked on the roadside. Although he didn't know what happened inside Koenigsha Pharmaceuticals and why there was a short burst of fire, He didn't intend to give up on gathering information. However, it was nearly 4 a.m. now, and the security guards inside Kanagsha Pharmaceuticals should be the most vigilant. He waited. After daybreak, when the security guards inside thought that no one would sneak in quietly, they would sneak in unexpectedly and spy on the information. That was the best time. Blue Star Villa Complex. Tan Xiao had just returned home when he received a call from Mouse. After listening to Mouse's report, Tan Xiao was silent for a while and then slowly said, "Can you confirm the identity of the other party?" Mouse said, "I can't figure it out for the time being. But I suspect that he is from the National Intelligence Agency. Last night, there was a fierce battle near Kanagsha Pharmaceutical Company, so they should be the most nervous ones. Plus, the two armored warriors were able to heavily injure the special forces. They must be panicking." Tan Xiao slowly said, "Drag it out. You can contact the other party again in the morning. If the other party wants to buy information from you, just tell them that Xie Jiqiang has fled abroad. As for how he escaped, just say that you don't know. Also, tell them that SOE's people have already left. Last night, someone was burning a corpse in Kanagsha Pharmaceuticals. Don't tell them the identity of the corpse, just say it's a foreigner." "I understand." Rat replied with a hesitant tone. "If you have something to say, just say it. I don't like to beat around the bush," Tan Xiao said. Mouse quickly said, "Boss, I sold the information to the military before. If I sell the information you told me to the other party, I'm afraid it will arouse their vigilance. Once this matter is over, I'm afraid they will investigate me." Tan Xiao said, "I'll send someone to escort you out of Shanghai tonight. The intelligence network in the surrounding cities will need to be opened. Go to Changxi and stay there for 2 days before moving to another city. Also, I'll send 2 experts to protect you and teach you some disguise techniques." "Thank you, boss," said Mouse quickly. Tan Xiao hung up the phone and brought Mo Au to his study. He took out 6 large suitcases and a small suitcase from his interspatial ring and opened the small suitcase first. Inside the suitcase, there was a foam base with 6 bottles of green particles inlaid in the deep groove. "Boss, are these the gene particles?" Mo picked up a bottle and asked curiously after repeatedly observing it for a while. "They should be the gene particles, else Xie Jiqiang wouldn't be so cautious," said Tan Xiao. "However, we still don't know if the gene particles have any side effects, so we must test it first. I've already thought of someone to test it on the way back." "Who are you going to test it on, boss?" asked Mo, confused. "I'll find a way to get a batch of prisoners on death row from some domestic prisons in the near future," said Tan Xiao. "In any case, they're going to die soon, so it's best to use them for the test." Mo's expression changed as he said with a solemn expression, "The prisons in our country are somewhat different from those abroad. Whether it's the management system or the attitude of the internal staff, it's very difficult to get prisoners on death row. Why don't I personally make a trip to another country? In other countries, as long as they have enough money, they can get enough prisoners." Tan Xiao gave it a thought and felt that Mo's words made sense. He didn't want to cause trouble in the country, especially not involving the government. It would be very appropriate if he could spend money to get some prisoners on death row from some foreign prisons. "Oh, which prison do you think is suitable?" "What's the purpose of your test, boss?" asked Mo. "What I mean is, once the gene particles are used for the test and it turns out that there are no side effects, and it can greatly increase the strength of the people being tested. How would you deal with them then? There are a lot of options if you want to kill them directly. A large number of prisoners die in the world's top 10 most brutal prisons every year. But if you don't want to kill them and want to put them in an important position, then you'll need to screen them carefully. I can be ruthless toward my enemies." Tan Xiao forced a smile. "But it's hard for me to deal with those who have not offended me. If the gene particles have no side effects, I can consider putting them in an important position." After careful consideration, Mo finally said, "If that's the case, then there's a prison that's very suitable. Labor Camp 1319, Israel. This was a concentration camp for high-risk prisoners, and the entire prison's information was very confidential. Owen had once gone to this prison to assassinate a notorious arms dealer. According to our previous investigation, Labor Camp 1319 is just a large prison in Israel on the surface, but only a few people know that 16 countries of the United Nations have signed a top-secret agreement. More than 60% of the world's most brutal and terrifying prisoners will be secretly escorted there. You mean, the prisoners there are all terrifying figures? Tan Shio was surprised. Almost everyone's hands are stained with blood, and 80% of the prisoners imprisoned there will die there. Mo nodded. The number of prisoners in this camp is not many. There were only 1,200 of them 5 years ago. But if all of them are released and thrown into any country, I believe that country will be plunged into a huge turmoil. The world's top assassin organization, the Spectre of Evernight, was destroyed 11 years ago. Its top terrorist assassin, Spectre, is also a terrifying figure that makes the world's leaders turn pale at the mere mention of his name. Butcher, who killed more than 1,000 people with his own hands, is also imprisoned there. Since he's so powerful, why didn't he escape? Tan Shio frowned. It's not easy to enter Labor Camp 1319, and it's even more difficult to get out. Mo forced a smile. Aun and I, along with 6 other experts of our everlasting feast hall, used every trick and scheme to sneak Aun inside. In order to let Aun escape, we cooperated with each other from the inside and outside, yet we still paid the price of 1 dead and 5 seriously injured to barely succeed. Hiss, Tan Shio couldn't help but gasp. He was very clear about the strength of Mo and Mo On. Even before they became martial cultivators, they were still very powerful. He didn't expect that they would pay such a big price just to assassinate a target. Tan Shio lit a cigarette. Halfway through, he asked the question he was most concerned about. Since this prison is so terrifying, I'm afraid it won't be easy to get the death row prisoners out, right? Money makes the world go round, said Mo. It won't be a problem as long as we can afford it. How much money do you think we need to spend to get Spectre out? Asked Tan Shio. It's too difficult without 9 digits, said Mo with a forced smile. I'm talking about US dollars, said Mo with a bitter smile. At least 100 million US dollars? Tan Shio's pupils shrunk and he asked in amazement. I once heard some news that Spectre had an enemy who was willing to pay 100 million US dollars to go to that prison. His purpose was very simple, to kill him for revenge. As a result, not only did that guy fail to take his revenge, he even lost his life. You mean, Spectre killed that guy in the prison? Asked Tan Shio. That's right. Mo nodded. A smile appeared on Tan Shio's face as he said, That's very interesting. I'm interested in Spectre now. Let's wait and see. I'm very poor now, and it's simply a pipe dream for me to get someone out of that prison. The most important thing now is to get some money. Shortly after, Tan Shio opened the other 6 suitcases. 2 of them contained a variety of exquisite instruments, a total of dozens of them. The other 4 big suitcases were filled with all kinds of information. Interesting. Aside from the data of the gene particles, there's even the research data of the armor. It seems like the harvest this time is not only the gene particles. Tan Shio took a new set of armor from Mo and put it inside his interspatial ring along with the documents. Then he said, Contact the logistics staff of the Everlasting Feast Hall's HQ in Jingmen Island. Tell them that I ordered them to send 11 medicinal pills that can increase cultivation. You've suffered a great loss tonight. Consider it a benefit for you. Mo's eyes lit up as he complied and left. After putting away the gene particles, Tan Shio went to the cloakroom and took a set of clean clothes. He then took a bath and changed into them. Since it was still early, he cultivated for 2 hours before he drove out. As he arrived at the Thompson Villa where Shuiyu lived, a strong fragrance of medicated cuisine greeted his nostrils. I thought you wouldn't come so early. The medicated cuisine will take more than an hour. Shuiyu was no longer in pajamas, but dressed up beautifully. Her presence added a beautiful scenery to the villa. Tan Shio took off his coat and nodded, then I'll wait for a while. I haven't had breakfast yet. By the way, I want to ask you something. Do you know the origin of the 6 starlight array? Shuiyu thought for a moment and slowly said, I've read a lot of information and confirmed that the 6 starlight array originated from the Solomon Islands. But I don't know whether the records in the ancient records are true or not. However, I found an interesting thing when I read it. Rumor has it that the 6 starlight array is an array used by a demon god to suppress his subordinates. It's like a cage. A cage? Tan Xiao pondered for a long while before he finally shook his head. He felt that this rumor was unreliable. The 6 starlight array contained profound mysteries and was very different from traditional arrays. He would believe it if it was created by a cultivator of another system, but to say that a demon god used a cage to suppress his subordinates was a bit of a nonsense. Whoever created the 6 starlight array, I'm afraid that his strength is quite terrifying. Perhaps when I reach the peak of the supremacy stage in the immortal world, I might not necessarily be his match. Also, the person who arranged the 6 starlight array in the cave in Kana's Longquan Bay is probably very powerful. Tan Xiao suddenly had the urge to return to Kana's, but he had a lot of things to deal with in the near future, so he could only suppress the impulse and wait for the recent matters to be dealt with before he went there again. Perhaps, standing in front of the 6 starlight array again would produce an unexpected effect in cracking its mysteries. Time fleeted by. As the medicated diet was served on the dining table, Shuiyu accompanied Tan Xiao to finish eating. After washing the dishes and chopsticks, she suddenly said before going out, "Tan Xiao, I'm going back to the Miao region in a few days." "What are you going to do there?" asked Tan Xiao. "First, I want to tell my parents that I'm already your woman," said Shuiyu. "They want to remove my name from the genealogy and move my household registration to yours. Also, I need to walk around the Miao region to look for some precious medicinal herbs." What? Tan Xiao didn't expect that Shuiyu would make such a decision. Moving her household registration to his household registration? How should he settle her? Was it possible that he would have to put her household registration in his household registration book? About that, there's no need to go through so much trouble, is there? Asked Tan Xiao with some hesitation. This is the ancestral home, so I must do it. Shuiyu shook her head and said, else I'll be ridiculed by my clansmen, thinking that I'm a trash abandoned by a man. You can rest assured that I'll just move my household registration to yours, so it won't affect you. I asked a friend to help me buy a house in Star City. That friend of mine has some power in Star City, so moving my household registration will be very easy. Tan Xiao suddenly understood and said, I'll send someone to help you with the matter of moving your household registration. There's no need to trouble your friend. As for the medicinal herbs in the Miao region, are there a lot of them? The Miao region is rich in medicinal herbs. Shuiyu nodded and said, some of them are sparsely populated, but the geographical location is very dangerous. There are a lot of precious medicinal herbs growing there. In the past, our people in the Miao region would organize pharmacists to go to some relatively safe places to pick medicinal herbs every year. Tan Xiao thought for a moment and then said, tell me before you leave. I'll send 2 experts to accompany you. Shuiyu nodded, but then shook her head and said, I must tell you before I leave because I can't go back with my whole body. As for sending someone to protect me, there's no need for that since it's not convenient. What do you mean by you can't go back with your whole body? Tan Xiao was confused. A blush appeared on Shuiyu's ears. She didn't dare to look straight at Tan Xiao. After hesitating for a moment, she said in a low voice, that is to say, I'll lose my virginity. Tan Xiao instantly understood and a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. After a dry cough, he waved his hand and said, I know what you're worried about. Don't worry. The people I'll send to protect you are women, and they're also cultivators. If you want to find precious medicinal herbs in the Miao region, you'll inevitably go to some dangerous places. Having them to protect you will make you feel safer. All right. Shuiyu gently nodded and took a white mink coat from the rack at the door. She then picked up a pair of sunglasses from the cabinet and asked after putting them on, do you need them? Tan Xiao didn't have the habit of wearing sunglasses, so he shook his head and pushed the door to go out. Shanghai's medicinal herbs market was located on Xiaofei Road in Dongpu District. Tan Xiao had been here before and was quite familiar with the place. After finding a good place to park the car, he and Shuiyu entered the medicinal herbs market together. The medicinal herbs market was not crowded since it was not a holiday. Aside from the stall owners and assistants, there were only a few elderly people or customers who came to buy medicinal herbs. What about that fruit boss? Tan Xiu followed Shui Yu to a stall. Shui Yu quickly glanced at it and asked with a frown. The store's owner was young and looked to be in his 30s. He wore a down jacket, jeans, and a cap on his head. Upon seeing Shui Yu's arrival along with a young man with an extraordinary bearing, he faintly regretted it, but still, he said, "I'll sell it." "Didn't we have a deal yesterday?" Shui Yu's expression turned a bit ugly. "I brought the money to buy it today, so leave it for me for a day." The shop owner probed, "Do you really want to spend 4 million to buy that hoarfrost fruit?" "Of course I do," answered Shui Yu without hesitation. "If I didn't want to, would I still be able to come back here today?" The shop owner looked regretful and bitterly said, "I asked you for a deposit yesterday, but you only gave me 200 yuan. I thought you were just teasing me. Besides, I thought you were lying when you said you would come here today, so I sold that hoarfrost fruit. I'm so depressed that I lost 800,000 yuan. I really only brought 200 yuan in cash yesterday." Asked Shui Yu. "You sold that fruit for 2 million? The shop owner awkwardly said, "Yeah. I know that the price of a hoarfrost fruit should be around 4 to 5 million yuan, but that hoarfrost fruit of mine has obviously been stored for a long time, so a lot of its medicinal efficacy should have been lost. So old man Hua was willing to spend 2 million to buy it. I sold it to him." "Who's that old man Hua?" asked Shui Yu quickly. Chapter 721. The shop owner pointed to the corner in the distance and said, "He's the owner of the best shop in the corner over there. He's also in the medicinal herbs business. Almost all the people who have been doing business in this medicinal herbs market all year round know him. You can go there and ask. You'll know." "All right," Shui Yu replied. She then pulled Tan Xiu's arm and left. She had a bad impression of this shop owner. Such a short-sighted person. Not only did he not keep his promise, but he also sold the treasure at such a cheap price, which really disgusted her. Tan Xiu had never heard the name of the singular recherche fruit, nor did he know how good it was. Although Shui Yu had explained the curative effect of the singular recherche fruit, he only regarded it as a relatively precious spirit fruit. "Don't worry. Since we know who bought it, it's possible to buy it back. At worst, the price will be higher. We can afford it," comforted Tan Xiu. With a firm look in her eyes, Shui Yu said, "I must buy the singular recherche fruit even if there's only a slim chance. I'm confident that I can make you the most sumptuous medicated diet after I get it." "Medicated diet?" The corner of Tan Xiu's mouth couldn't help but twitch twice. Spending millions to buy a precious spirit fruit just to make a sumptuous medicated diet for him, this Shui Yu really didn't regard money as money. However, this kind of thing was not common. He didn't feel like scolding Shui Yu. After all, she spent a lot of money to buy it for his sake. Treasure collection shop. It was a very ordinary shop with a very ordinary inlaid plaque on its door. The entire medicinal herbs store was very big, but the inside looked particularly empty. Except for 2 young clerks, a man and a woman, who were playing with their mobile phones in a bored manner, there was no one else. The young man was the first to see Tan Xiu and Shui Yu. However, his eyes only stayed on Tan Xiu for a moment before shifting to Shui Yu. He couldn't move his eyes away for a long time. Ever since Shui Yu took off her veil, she had been accustomed to strange men staring at her, so she didn't mind and asked in a cold voice, "We're looking for Boss Hua." The young man seemed to have just woken up from a dream. His pretty face instantly turned red. He had seen beautiful women before, but he had never seen one as beautiful as Shui Yu. After all, he was still young and lacked self-control. Therefore, he awkwardly stammered as he recalled his gaffe just now, "Our boss. He's upstairs receiving guests." Shui Yu gently nodded and said, "Can you take us up? We want to make a deal with your boss." "Oh, all right. Please follow me." In order to hide his embarrassment, the young man stammered a reply and turned to jog toward the stairs. When he just stepped on 2 steps, he suddenly realized that he was running a little too fast, and the guests seemed to be unable to keep up. At once, he paused for a few seconds and secretly glanced back before slowing down his pace to go upstairs. A smile was revealed on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. He was well aware of the young shop assistant's performance. If he hadn't experienced 10,000 years of cultivation in the immortal world and was still the same young man as before, his performance would probably not be any better than this young shop assistant. On the second floor, Hua Siming's office was located in the innermost part. Usually, apart from receiving important guests, ordinary people were not allowed to enter this office. The decoration here was very exquisite, and the wooden furniture and cabinets were also very well placed. Sitting on the mahogany coffee table, Hua Siming stroked his white beard as his astute eyes constantly glanced at the guests who were appraising the medicinal herbs on the opposite chairs. Two guests, the hoarfrost fruit is definitely a good thing. I've been operating in this medicinal herb market for so many years, but I've only got 2 hoarfrost fruits in total. This is the second one. Moreover, the 6.5 million I quoted is absolutely fair. Of the 2 guests, one was an energetic old man in a traditional Chinese suit and the other was a charming young woman. If someone who had participated in the underground fighting competition was here, they would definitely be able to recognize her. She was the host of the underground fighting competition, Black Widow. The old man in the tang suit stared at the spirit fruit in his hand and secretly despised it. Hua Siming mistakenly thought that this spirit fruit was a hoarfrost fruit, but he was very clear that this was a singular relic fruit that was very similar to the hoarfrost fruit. However, he came to Shanghai's medicinal herb market this time to look for the Millennium Wild Ginseng, but he didn't expect to encounter such a precious spirit fruit. The most important thing was that he seemed to be able to pick up a big bargain. He was too lazy to tell Hua Siming the true value of this singular relic fruit. Knock, knock. The door of the office was knocked. The young shop assistant carefully opened the door and poked his head in to look inside. When his eyes fell on Hua Siming, he immediately pushed the door open and said, "Boss, there are 2 distinguished guests. They said they want to make a deal with you." Hua Siming didn't expect that a well-behaved shop assistant would rush in. He was about to scold him, but after hearing his words, Hua Siming suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in confusion, "Distinguished guests? Make a deal? Who are they?" At the door, Tan Xiu and Shui Yu appeared. As they entered the room, Shui Yu's eyes instantly fell on the singular relic fruit in the hands of the old man in the tang suit. A glint flashed in her eyes as she said, "Your boss Hua, right? My name is Shui Yu, and I want to buy that spirit fruit from you." Hua Siming was stunned and a series of question marks appeared on his forehead. He happened to find the hoarfrost fruit yesterday and spent some money to buy it. He didn't expect that he would encounter 2 groups of guests interested in the hoarfrost fruit this morning. However, this was a good thing. Hua Siming was a bit excited. There was a market only when there was competition. If these 2 groups of people were determined to get the hoarfrost fruit, then they would definitely compete with each other on the price, and he would be the one who would benefit in the end. The old man in the tang suit turned his head and looked at Tan Xiu and Shui Yu. Before Hua Siming could speak, he said, "Young lady, you came at a bad time. I've taken a fancy to this hoarfrost fruit. You can look elsewhere if you need it." Hua Siming's expression slightly changed and he quickly said, "You didn't say that you want to buy it, old Mr. Situ. Since you didn't say that you want to buy it, then they have the hope to buy it. You see, they have already given their answer." The old man in the tang suit slightly furrowed his brows and a cold light flashed in his eyes. How could he not hear that Hua Siming wanted him to compete with the 2 young people who just came? Although he didn't like Hua Siming's means, he had to admit that he didn't agree to buy it. He somewhat regretted it, but now was not the time to do so. Let the loan 6.5 million, he would buy it even if it was 65 million. However, he didn't want to be a sucker, so he slowly got up and looked at Tan Xiu and Shui Yu, saying, "Both of you, no matter what you do, you should pay attention to the order of arrival, first served. This hoarfrost fruit is already in my hands, and I also intend to buy it. Therefore, I hope you won't get involved." Black Widow didn't know Tan Xiu. After all, there were many guests during the underground fighting match, and she didn't have the time to remember everyone. As the old man in the tang suit got up, she also hurriedly got up and looked at Tan Xiu and Shui Yu, saying, "Gentlemen, let me introduce you. This is Senior Situhong of the Situ family in the imperial capital. Even the Situ family's patriarch has to call him second uncle. Shui Yu frowned. She could hear that the old man introduced Situhong to use the Situ family to put pressure on them. Similarly, Tan Xiao, who stood next to Shui Yu, could also hear the meaning. Situhong? You must be determined to get it, right? Asked Tan Xiao slowly. That's right. I need this hoarfrost fruit. Situhong nodded. Boss Hua and I have reached an agreement on the price. Tan Xiao shook his head and said, if that's the case, then I'll eat less medicated cuisine. I have some friendship with your Situ family after all, so I can't reject your face at this time. Presumptuous. Black Widow's expression changed and she angrily rebuked. A bit of anger appeared on Situhong's face, along with a bit of astonishment in his eyes. He didn't expect that Tan Xiao wanted to buy this singular recherche fruit just to eat a medicated cuisine. It must be noted that even if they didn't recognize it as a singular recherche fruit and bought it as a hoarfrost fruit, it would still cost 5 to 6 million yuan. Hua Siming felt a bit regretful inwardly. He thought that these two young men would compete with Situhong on the price, and he would eventually benefit from it. He didn't expect that the young man would directly admit defeat. Sighing inwardly, he waved and said, since you can't afford to buy it, then go downstairs and wait for me. I'll entertain these two guests first, and then I'll entertain you later. Shui Yu was a bit unwilling, but after hearing Hua Siming's order to expel them, she hesitantly said, Tan Xiao, I really want to. Tan Xiao interrupted her. Wasn't it just a medicated cuisine? It was fine to eat it once, but there was no need for him to challenge the Situ family's elders for such a trivial matter. Besides, he was very poor now. Apart from the 10 million yuan he had given to Shui Yu, he only had 2 million yuan in his bank account. Once he went tit for tat with Situhong on the price, he would be the one who would lose face in the end. Let's go. Tan Xiao reached out to grab Shui Yu's shoulder and turned to walk toward the door. Wait. Situhong's complexion slightly changed as he chased after Tan Xiao and called out. Tan Xiao turned around and said with dissatisfaction, We've given up. What else do you want? Situhong said with a probing tone, This young lady just called you Tan Xiao? Are you the young divine doctor of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital, Tan Xiao? Tan Xiao lightly said, I never thought that I'm quite famous. Even the second uncle of the Situ family's patriarch knows my name. Situhong's complexion completely changed. A complicated expression appeared in his eyes as he said, It turns out to be you, Grandmaster Tang. I didn't know your identity, Great Guru Tang, so I hope you can forgive me if I offended you. I do want to buy this hoarfrost fruit, but I'd like to give it to you as an apology. Chapter 722. Upon hearing Situhong's words, Tan Xiao was stunned. But then, he realized that this man probably knew about his identity as a cultivator. After all, whether it was the talismans he sold to the Situ family, or the matter of him killing Jin Sanqi, Jin Sijie, and Daoist Chenkuan, as well as sending people to wipe out the 8 major families of the Strange Doors, it was likely that the Strange Doors family had already investigated it. He's afraid of me. Tan Xiao shot a deep look at Situhong and found fear surging in his eyes. He immediately forced a wry smile inwardly. At the side, Shui Yu stared blankly with a surprised look on her face. Hua Siming was even more dumbfounded. He really couldn't figure out why such an old man would buy a precious spirit fruit out of his own pocket and then give it to someone else for free. The most ridiculous thing was that he seemed to be afraid that the other party wouldn't accept it, so he even apologized. Black Widow, on the other hand, was dumbfounded with a look of disbelief in her eyes. She simply couldn't believe her ears. In her eyes, the most distinguished ancestor of the Situ family, who she considered to be aloof and remote, actually spoke to Tan Xiao with honorifics. What was most unacceptable to her was that this ancestor of the Situ family seemed to be afraid of the young man in front of her, and even flattered him. What kind of situation was this? Could it be that with the status of the Situ family and the ability of this ancestor, there was no one in the entire Huaxia that could make him dread? Black Widow was afraid that Situhong was old and muddled, so she immediately reminded him after sobering up, Senior Situ, did you make a mistake? I'm not muddle-headed, nor did I make a mistake, said Siduhong resolutely. My attitude toward Grandmaster Tang just now was a big mistake, and I must correct it. That's why I must compensate Grandmaster Tang with this spirit fruit. With that said, he chased after Tan Xiao and presented the singular recherche fruit with both hands, saying, Grandmaster Tang, please don't stoop to my level and be magnanimous. I'm sincerely apologizing. I hope you can accept it and give me a chance to make up for my mistake. Tan Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Siduhong. Since Siduhong had already said so much, Tan Xiao didn't want to refuse again. After taking the singular recherche fruit, he smiled and said, Siduhong, right? The people of the Situ clan are really good, and they always satisfy me. Fine, I'll accept this singular recherche fruit. Siduhong's face lit up with joy. He said from the bottom of his heart, It's my honor that you can accept it. It's almost noon, I wonder if I can have the honor to invite Master Tang for a meal? Tan Xiao thought for a while before shaking his head and said, Forget it. I still have something to do later, so I'll skip the meal. However, for the sake of this singular recherche fruit, I will give you a big gift. In half a month, you'd better go to Hong Kong and look for Li Juren. I'm sure you'll find something there. Li Juren? Siduhong stared blankly for a moment. He really knew Li Juren and even had a bit of friendship with him. Although he didn't know what the big gift Tan Xiao was talking about, he still respectfully said, I'll definitely visit Li Juren personally when the time comes. Tan Xiao nodded and said goodbye before leaving with Shuiyu. The purpose of his visit to the medicinal herbs market was for this singular recherche fruit. Now that he had gotten it, he didn't want to stay here any longer. Inside the office, Siduhong was not in a hurry to leave. His old face revealed an expression as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Even after he sat back down on the sofa, the wrinkles on his face had already stretched out, and a smile climbed onto his face. I don't understand, Senior Situ. Black Widow gritted her teeth and said after sitting down. Huasiming also didn't understand, so he also said, I don't get it either. Though I know that Tang Xiao is a young divine doctor in the Chinese medical field, and even I admire him a bit, I still can't figure it out. With your identity, why would you act like this in front of him? So cautious? So respectful? So flattering? Siduhong glanced at Huasiming. The smile on his old face didn't change as he said, If he's an ordinary person, he's indeed not qualified to make me act like this. But who is he? Is he just a young divine doctor in the Chinese medicine industry? How honorable is his identity? That's something you can't even imagine. Forget it. It's better if you don't know some things. In short, remember that you must never offend him in the future. You must even treat him like a little ancestor. Huasiming snorted disdainfully inwardly, but he didn't refute Siduhong's words on the surface. He was just a medicinal herbs merchant and an old man. He wouldn't be as shameless as this Siduhong in front of him. Also, was the Situ family very famous? He knew a lot of big families in the provinces, but he had never heard of a big family surnamed Situ. Black Widow, on the other hand, attached great importance to Siduhong's warning. After nodding heavily, she looked at the direction of the door with a somewhat complicated expression. She knew Siduhong's status in the Situ family. Even a casual word from him could make the Situ family's patriarch flatter him with a smile. His status in the strange doors was absolutely a figure of Mount Tai and the Big Dipper. Who wouldn't be respectful in front of him? But who exactly was this Tan Xiao? Inside the medicinal herbs market. Tan Xiao originally intended to leave directly, but Shuiyu said that she still wanted to buy some auxiliary herbs for the medicinal cuisine. Therefore, he had no choice but to follow her to look for and buy the herbs in the shops and stalls. In just half an hour, he saw that Shuiyu had spent more than 270,000 to buy those auxiliary herbs. What a wastrel! Tan Xiao couldn't help but secretly shake his head. Finally, when the last medicinal herb Shuiyu wanted to buy was packed, she said with a slightly regretful expression, I've bought all the herbs for the medicinal cuisine. It's a pity that this place isn't in the Miao region. Otherwise, the most important auxiliary herb, the ginseng, wouldn't need to be replaced by this artificially cultivated ordinary ginseng. I say, eldest miss, do you know the price of a wild ginseng? Tan Xiao forced a smile. Take the Millennium Wild Ginseng, for example. It's impossible to buy it without 9 digits. You said before that the value of the singular recherche fruit is more than 9 digits. If you use the Millennium Wild Ginseng as the auxiliary herb, you'll have to spend 2 to 300 million yuan to cook a medicinal cuisine. Isn't this a wastrel? Even the richest man in the world won't be able to withstand your tossing and turning. A smile was revealed on the corner of Shui Yu's mouth. Although she was carrying a lot of medicinal herbs, she still moved closer to Tan Xiao and chuckled, "The medicinal cuisine I'm going to cook this time is not the usual one for you. According to the ancient records of my clan, this is already a divine-level medicinal cuisine. It's like a miraculous elixir that has great benefits for those who take it. Even if I want to drink it, I'm afraid I won't dare to drink too much." "Why?" Tan Xiao was puzzled. "My body's strength can't withstand the medicinal effect," said Shui Yu. Tan Xiao's eyes lit up. He pondered for a moment and resolutely said, "Since you really want to cook a perfect medicinal cuisine, then I'll follow your heart. I have the Millennium Wild Ginseng. I'll give it to you when we return to our residence." "Really?" Shui Yu's expression greatly changed and she asked excitedly. "Of course it's true. When have I, Tan Xiao, ever lied?" Tan Xiao snappily said. "But you gotta take it easy, Millennium Wild Ginseng. It's so difficult to get this kind of wild ginseng nowadays." 4 hours later, at Thompson Villa. Although Tan Xiao was sitting in the living room, a strong medicinal fragrance still drifted out from the kitchen door and floated throughout the hall. Whether it was after he came back from the immortal world or when he was in the immortal world, he had eaten a lot of delicacies. But this time, just the fragrance alone had aroused his appetite. Such a situation was really rare. "Wash your hands and eat." Shui Yu came out of the kitchen with an apron and a purple clay pot in her hand. When she came to the dining room and followed Tan Xiao to wash his hands, she carefully opened the lid of the purple clay pot and quickly scooped a bowl of fragrant medicinal cuisine. After putting it in front of Tan Xiao, she hurriedly said, "You're a cultivator and very powerful. So pay attention when you drink it. Don't ignore the medicinal efficacy contained in the medicinal cuisine just because of the taste." Tan Xiao smiled indifferently. Just as he was about to pick up the bowl and drink it, he saw Shui Yu grab a small spoon and scooped a spoonful of medicinal cuisine from the clay pot. She then stuck out her pink tongue and carefully licked it. That's right. She licked it. Tang Xiao was accustomed to Shui Yu's solemn and aloof appearance. At this moment, seeing her lick the medicated diet with her pink and fragrant tongue unexpectedly gave him a different kind of seductive feeling. He even had a strong impulse that burst out from his lower abdomen. "Damn it!" Tan Xiao hurriedly lowered his head and silently recited the clear mind art to suppress the hot and dry feeling. Drinking the medicinal cuisine was the most important thing at the moment. After all, the amount of medicinal cuisine was less than 2 bowls, yet it cost a huge sum of 200 to 300 million yuan. What a waste! Tan Xiao drank a mouthful of the medicinal cuisine with a bit of heartache. When he swallowed it, a scalding hot torrent instantly burst out, as though it turned into thousands of strands of heat that flooded his limbs and 5 organs like a tide. Drink it quickly, Tan Xiao. Once the lid is opened, the medicinal efficacy in the medicinal cuisine will be lost at a much faster rate. The earlier you drink it into your stomach, the more medicinal efficacy will be retained. Shui Yu finally stopped licking the medicinal cuisine and carefully took a small sip. After drinking it, she looked at Tan Xiao and said, Tang Xiao stared blankly for a moment before gulping down all the medicated diet in the bowl. Under the worried expression of Shui Yu, he directly filled a small half bowl for her and then poured the rest of the medicated diet in the purple casserole into his own bowl and gulped it down into his stomach. Hot! After Tan Xiao drank the medicinal cuisine, the only feeling he had was heat. Not only the surface of his body, but also the inside of his body. Even his internal organs seemed to be wrapped in a monstrous heat wave. At this moment, despite Tan Xiao's strong willpower, he was still dizzy from the sudden burst of medicinal efficacy. His whole body seemed to have turned into a big furnace. At first, he felt a little heartache, but when he could officially control the long sword, his heartache instantly vanished. No matter how good an item was, it was still not as good as a divine weapon that truly belonged to him. Tan Xiao could even feel the hazy artifact spirit contained within this long sword. Its energy was very strong, but its intelligence was very weak. Only with time and continuous nourishment could it truly give birth to a sword spirit and become an immortal or divine weapon that truly belonged to him. Suddenly, Tan Xiao found that there was actually a planet in his Dantian space that was slightly larger than the other planets. The primal chaos force in his Dantian space was actually constantly merging with this planet and constantly dissipating from this planet. As he operated according to the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, the surging primal chaos force crazily surged out from the planet and entered the meridians in his body. When he collected most of the primal chaos force from his meridians into his Dantian space, it once again merged with the planet. Tang Xiao's discovery puzzled him. But after a long time of research, he found out that these so-called planets were actually the phantoms of countless stars in the starry sky of the universe that had been devoured by the massive primal chaos force. In other words, every planet was formed by energy. As long as there was more energy, the size of the planet would also be larger. In the end, it did not seem to be difficult to form a real planet. After a long time, Tang Xiao let out a bitter smile and slowly opened his closed eyes. He found that the celestial bodies were formed by primal chaos energy, a feeling of helplessness filling his heart. It was indeed a good thing for his body to evolve into a universe. After all, once this universe was truly formed, he would be the god of it. However, how much primal chaos force would be needed to accumulate tens of millions of planets into a real big planet? You're awake? It was unknown when Shuiyu had put on her bra. She was leaning sideways and holding her head while watching Tan Xiao. Although she found that Tan Xiao had woken up, she was a bit shy and blushed, but she still looked at Tan Xiao face to face. Tan Xiao was a bit embarrassed at the moment. He was forced to have Shuiyu's body at a critical moment. He could still clearly remember the pain Shuiyu had to endure at the beginning. After coughing dryly, Tan Xiao sat up and said with a dry smile, Are you all right? Shuiyu also sat up and gently shook her head. I'm fine. Thank you. Shuiyu also sat up and gently shook her head. I'm fine. Thank you. Thank me? Tan Xiao was dumbfounded. He should be thanking her, shouldn't he? How did she become the one thanking him? According to what you told me before, it's not easy to sense qi, and it will take at least a year and a half to control it, said Shuiyu softly. But if you want to truly cultivate true essence, it will take at least a year or two. I don't know what method you used, but I'm sure that I've stepped into the threshold of a cultivator and already have true essence. What? Tan Xiao suddenly recalled the previous situation and immediately reached out to check Shuiyu's pulse. Half a minute later, a strange expression appeared on his face because he found that not only did Shuiyu cultivate true essence, but the amount was also quite a lot. The yin and yang harmonization actually pushed Shuiyu's cultivation to the early stage of foundation establishment. She directly skipped the qi refining stage? Tan Xiao's mouth couldn't help but twitch a few times. He felt that it was very absurd, but he had no choice but to accept the fact. Was this a blessing in disguise for Shuiyu? Shuiyu was oblivious to Tan Xiao's thoughts. A satisfied smile hung on her beautiful face as she said, I should be a cultivator now, right? When can you teach me some spells? You can learn at any time if you want to. Tan Xiao couldn't help but laugh. But first, tell me about the medicated diet. Shuiyu's expression slightly changed upon hearing it, and she said in a low voice, I'm really sorry. It's also my first time cooking this medicated diet. You looked very scary and dangerous before. Are you all right now? Not only am I fine, but I also got a lot of benefits. Tan Xiao shook his head and smilingly said, I originally thought that the medicated diet I cooked at a great cost only had a lot of medicinal efficacy. I didn't expect that it actually contained a strange energy that made the space inside my body undergo earth-shaking changes. It seems that your Miao region does have a lot of good things. Then, do you want to go back with me? Shuiyu asked with a smile. Tan Xiao thought for a while and said, I'm afraid I don't have the time in the short term. Let's wait for a while. I'll go to Kana's again after I'm done with my recent affairs. I've studied the 6 starlight array and I may be able to make some new progress if I go there again. Maybe I can directly crack the 6 starlight array and take the immortal trove. Take me with you when you go to Kana's, said Shuiyu quickly. I also want to see what kind of things this immortal trove is. Alright. Tan Xiu readily agreed. Suddenly, both of them fell into silence. The enchanting atmosphere made both of them a bit awkward and they didn't know what to say. After a while, Tan Xiu really couldn't stand the atmosphere and asked, "Do you want to sleep for a while?" Looking at the sky outside, Shuiyu nodded and said, "Then let's sleep for a while. Will you accompany me?" Alright. The duo hugged each other and quickly fell asleep. After an unknown period of time, Tan Xiu, who was sleeping soundly, was woken up by the urgent ringtone of his mobile phone. Shuiyu, who was resting on Tan Xiu's arm, opened her eyes in a daze and asked, "You got a call?" Tan Xiu nodded and pulled his arm to take the mobile phone. He found that it was a call from Kong Xia. After connecting the call, he asked, "What's up, Kong Xia?" "We've arrived in Shanghai, boss." "Where you now?" asked Kong Xia with a smile. Tan Xiu stared blankly and asked with a puzzled expression, "Didn't you say you'll come here in 2 or 3 days? How come you've arrived in Shanghai in just 1 day?" Kong Xia was at a loss whether she had to cry or laugh. "Have you become muddle-headed, boss? It's been 3 days. Huh." Tan Xiu quickly looked at the date and found that it had indeed been 3 days. He didn't expect that drinking a bowl of medicated diet, experiencing a crisis, obtaining a benefit, taking Shuiyu as his woman, and then taking a nap for a while turned out to be such a long time. "Let's go to Blue Star Villa. I'll be back later." "All right." After hanging up the phone, Tan Xiu put the mobile phone on the bedside table and said, "I have something to do, so I'll be leaving first. Kong Xia has arrived in Shanghai with her company's people. I need to talk to them about the bidding for the next project." "Is Kong Xia the CEO of the magnificent Tang Corporation?" asked Shuiyu. "Yeah." Tan Xiu nodded. "She's very beautiful," said Shuiyu. Tan Xiu didn't understand the meaning of Shuiyu's words, but he had heard from that fatty, Yuan Chuling, that one must never praise another woman in front of another woman. Therefore, he didn't answer her but said with a smile, "I should be free tomorrow night, so I'll come and have dinner with you." "Alright." Shuiyu was a bit reluctant, but she still controlled herself and nodded. Before she and Tan Xiu were husband and wife, she only occasionally thought of Tan Xiu and felt that she should miss Tan Xiu. But when it came to feelings, she only had a small liking for him and didn't have too many feelings for him. But now, it was different. She had completely given herself to Tan Xiu, whether it was her body or her heart. Therefore, even if it was only for half a day, she still felt reluctant to part with him. "Put on some clothes." Tan Xiu smiled and kissed her forehead. Then he took out a new set of clothes from his interspatial ring. Chapter 724. Blue Star Villa Complex. Kong Xia had been here more than once or twice, so the security guards didn't stop her. The 2 nannies in the villa treated her as the hostess and served her. A hot meal was served on the table, but Kong Xia didn't even touch her chopsticks. When Tan Xiu returned home and saw Kong Xia in the dining room, he walked over and sat opposite her with a smile. "What are you thinking about?" Kong Xia came back to her senses and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. She then said, "It's nothing. I just feel very tired recently, so I want to go abroad to relax after I'm done with the bidding." Tan Xiu nodded and smilingly said, "You can arrange the time yourself. But tell me in advance before you go. I need to send more people to protect you." "I already have enough bodyguards." Kong Xia shook her head. "That's because you think they're enough, but I don't think so." Tan Xiu sighed. "Relatively speaking, it's very safe in the country. Those bodyguards can protect you both in the light and in the dark. But it's different when you go abroad. Many forces all over the world are now eyeing several products of our magnificent Tang Corporation. Once you step out of the country, I'm sure many forces will target you in just a few days. They will even pay a huge price to attack and kidnap you." Kong Xia slightly furrowed her brows. She thought for a moment and then said, "Then forget it. I won't give myself a holiday. But it's all right. I can recommend a good place for you," Tan Xiao said with a smile. "Where is it?" Kong Xia asked. "It's our future headquarters, 9 Dragons Island," said Tan Xiao. "Inin is there now." Kong Xia's eyes lit up and she said with anticipation, "I know you bought 9 Dragons Island and are now renovating it. But I haven't been there until now." "All right, then I'll go to 9 Dragons Island to have some fun." Tan Xiao nodded with a smile and greeted Kong Xia to have a meal. The two chatted while eating, and it didn't take long for the lunch to be finished. After returning to the living room, Tan Xiao learned from Kong Xia that all the senior executives of the magnificent Tang Corporation who came to Shanghai with her were arranged to stay at the Paradise Manor. What made Tan Xiao even more surprised was that Kong Xia also held the bidding meeting in the Paradise Manor. "Why did you put it there?" Tan Xiao asked in confusion. Kong Xia replied in a soft voice, "Aren't we short on money now? Every penny should be used wisely. Anyway, Paradise Manor isn't an outsider's property, so we should keep the goodies to ourselves. The last time Ouyang Lulu called me to ask for wine, she didn't even try to be polite. So, it's always a good thing to be able to reduce some expenses." Cough, cough. Tan Xiao was a bit embarrassed upon hearing this. He could sense a trace of resentment in Kong Xia's tone. However, he instantly thought of another matter. She said she was tired and wanted to go abroad to relax. Could it be because of me and Ouyang Lulu? Thinking of this, Tan Xiao had a headache. The relationship between a man and a woman was too complicated. He had already shot the arrow, and there was no turning back. It was just that he felt somewhat sorry for Kong Xia. Kong Xia's eyes turned dark. From Tan Xiao's expression, she realized that Ouyang Lulu's words were true. Although she had already prepared herself for it, there was still a deep feeling of sadness and depression inside her heart. Tan Xiao sighed inside. He knew that this was not the time to be silent, so he stood up and pulled Kong Xia. Holding her hand, they walked out of the door. "Where are we going?" As Tan Xiao took out the car key and opened the door, Kong Xia finally asked. Tan Xiao said, "You've been busy with the company's affairs, so I believe that you rarely go out shopping. In any case, there's nothing else to do in the afternoon, so you can put down your work first. I'll accompany you to go shopping." Kong Xia understood Tan Xiao's meaning. He was apologizing to her. Speaking of which, she and Tan Xiao had been together for a long time, but the number of times Tan Xiao accompanied her to go shopping was actually very few. Shopping, eating delicacies, and watching movies. Throughout the afternoon and evening, Tan Xiao and Kong Xia were inseparable, leaving their footprints in many bustling areas of Shanghai. It was not until the early hours of the morning that they returned to the Blue Star Villa complex. Following that, the matter between a man and a woman was in full swing until the two were exhausted and satisfied. What the two of them didn't know was that when they were satisfied, in a luxurious business room of Shanghai's Wenge Road Hotel, a white-haired young man couldn't sleep at night and smoked bitterly. Chen Zixue, Zhejiang Province's Sinyuan Group's general manager, a millionaire with tens of billions of assets. He was the idol of many young talents and also a diamond bachelor in the eyes of many women. A semi-finished product? Will it work? With a cigarette in one hand and a cup of water in the other, he looked distressed. Sinyuan Group could become one of the top 10 construction companies in the country, and it was inseparable from his personal ability. But at this moment, he was somewhat at a loss. He was not old, only 29 years old. 8 years ago, he was young and frivolous. He was definitely the leader of the rich and playboys in Zhejiang Province, and his reputation was in shambles. He originally thought that he could squander his youth freely and enjoy a good life, but the result was that the sky above his head collapsed. The previous general manager of Sinyuan Group's father died because of a cerebral hemorrhage, and the huge pressure suddenly fell on him. Although it didn't make him collapse, it still made his hair turn white overnight. The inheritance rights of 75% of the entire Sinyuan Group's shares made him the general manager who countless people were waiting to laugh at. 8 years. He changed his former playboy style and crazily learned all kinds of knowledge, constantly filling in his shortcomings. It was as if he was bewitched. In the first year when he took over as general manager of Sinuan Group, the company's stock index plummeted by nearly 20% and the company's assets shrunk severely. In the second year when he took over, the company's income and expenses were balanced, and it could be said that it didn't make any losses or profits. In the third year, through an extremely risky merger and the opening sale of a new building, he earned back the losses of the first year when he took over, and there was still some surplus. The fifth year, the Sinuan Group's income continued to increase, and it could even be described as skyrocketing. Pieces of land were bought by them, residential areas were opened for sale, and commercial buildings were sold. In 8 years, the total assets of the Sinuan Group had skyrocketed by more than 10 times. Chen Zixue had also become a famous real estate tycoon in the domestic business world, with a resounding reputation. Ring, 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 his mobile phone's ringtone sounded, causing Chen Zixue's expression to change. He quickly took out his mobile phone to answer the call and asked in a deep voice, "Did you find it?" "I found it." After a while, Chen Zixue hung up the phone, but then dialed another number. Blue Star Villa Complex. Tan Xiao had just fallen asleep when he was woken up by the urgent ringtone of his mobile phone. He looked at Kang Xia, who was still sleeping soundly. Tan Xiao helplessly grabbed his mobile phone and found that it was an unfamiliar number. He hesitated for a moment, but still picked it up and said, "Tan Xiao speaking, who is this?" "I'm really sorry to disturb you so late at night, Mr. Tang. I'm Chen Zixue of the Sinuan Group. Spit it out if you have something to say." Tan Xiao's tone was a bit bad. After all, the matter between husband and wife made him a bit tired. He had just fallen asleep and was woken up again, which made him feel very depressed. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Tang. I know it's wrong to disturb you so late at night, but I have no other choice," said Chen Zixue. "Can you meet me now?" "Are you kidding me?" Tan Xiao looked at the time and found that it was 2:30 a.m. in the middle of the night, so he immediately spoke with a bad mood. "I'm afraid that I'll be kicked out of the game tomorrow," said Chen Zixue with a forced smile. "Tomorrow?" Tan Xiao recalled the bidding for the project. He immediately recalled the list of the top 10 construction companies in the country given to him by Kang Xia, and the Sinuan Group was one of them. As for the general manager of the Sinuan Group, the real helmsman was Chen Zixue. But did he want to open the back door for the project bidding this late at night? Tan Xiao thought for a few seconds and said, "Where are you now?" "Shanghai's Winger Road Grand Hotel." "I don't know where that is. Come to Shanghai University within an hour if you want to see me. I'll be waiting for you at the university's gate." 40 minutes later, at the gate of Shanghai University, Tan Xiao was neatly dressed and sitting in a car, quietly reading the information he had just found on the internet. It was Chen Zixue's resume. The content was very short, but it had a lot of highlights. After reading it, he even had an illusion that Chen Zixue could be compared with him. His temperament had changed so much overnight that it was as if he had transmigrated back in time. "Boss, the HQ just sent a document." Mo stood outside the car window and handed the tablet to Tan Xiao. After reading it seriously, Tan Xiao's expression turned extremely serious. He didn't expect that the Everlasting Feast Hall would have Chen Zixue's information. The information was very detailed, and even some unknown things about Chen Zixue were clearly recorded. Pure young body? Gifted? The last comment of the document echoed in Tan Xiao's mind. The person who wrote it was Gu Xiaoxue. Tan Xiao hesitated for a moment before he dialed Gu Xiaoxue's number and asked, "Why do you have the information about Chen Zixue? Why didn't you recruit him to the Everlasting Feast Hall?" "Grandmaster, Master happened to meet Chen Zixue when he was a child, so he asked us to pay attention to his situation. Later on, Master stayed in the exquisite pagoda all year round, so I was responsible for sending people to investigate him. I found that there was something wrong with his temperament, so I just sent people to collect his information and didn't recruit him to the Everlasting Feast Hall." Temperament? When Tan Xiao read the document, there was a comment from Gu Xiaoxue, "Unfathomable mind, wild and untamable in his bones, ruthless and merciless, and fond of unconventional methods." Tan Xiao hung up the phone and handed the tablet to Mo, muttering, "He's a good talent, but it's a pity that he was born here. Do you want to subdue him, boss? Asked Mo with a moved expression. Tan Shio was silent for a moment before he suddenly smiled and said, I want to observe him more. Few men can pique my interest these days. If there's a surprise, maybe. Chapter 725. The harsh winter had passed, but the air was still chilly late at night. Under the dim streetlights, a few sparrows occasionally fluttered and flew over, their bellies rumbling with hunger as they braved the cold to forage for food. The moment the cigarette burned out, a black Mercedes-Benz came quickly and stopped behind Tan Shio's car. A stalwart man opened the door and Chen Zixue stepped out from the inside. He tightened his black trench coat and took a roll of paper to Tan Shio's car. Hello, Mr. Tang. Chen Zixue could see that Tan Shio had no intention to get off, so he could only helplessly bow and greet him. Expressionless, Tan Shio threw the cigarette butt out of the window. He looked at Chen Zixue's slightly changed expression and said indifferently, Hurry up and tell me what you want to say. It's so cold outside. It's better to sleep under the quilt. Chen Zixue was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly let out a smile and said, I'm very sorry to disturb you so late at night, Mr. Tang. The main purpose is for the project bidding that your company is about to hold recently. Mr. Tang should have heard the saying that slow work produces fine work. Due to the short time given by your company, I personally led the design team to rush out the design drawings, and only 60% of them have been completed. Please take a look at the drawings. Tan Shio casually glanced at him and immediately took the drawing from the window. His eyes suddenly focused after he opened it and looked at it for a few times. The drawing of this design drawing was excellent. According to the main design line given by Tan Shio, it was very well subdivided. Whether it was the height of the floors, the distribution of the buildings, the architectural shape, and the use of space, everything was done very well. Even though Tan Shio didn't know much about modern architectural design, he still felt that it was a bit amazing. Unfortunately, this was a semi-finished product. Tan Shio looked at the dozens of design drawings that were previously rolled up in the drawing again. Then he rolled it up again and handed it to Chen Zixue, saying, It's too cold here. Let's talk somewhere else. A glint flashed in Chen Zixue's eyes and he turned back to the car without hesitation. The two cars drove for less than 10 minutes and then stopped in front of a 24-hour convenience store on the nearby commercial street. Welcome. The young and beautiful female shop assistant raised her head and greeted them at the same time. This 24-hour convenience store had a total of 2 male and 1 female shop assistant. All 3 of them were very young. However, when the female clerk behind the counter saw Tan Shio, she was slightly stunned and said in surprise, Tan Shio? When Tan Shio first entered the store, he did not pay attention to the female shop assistant. When he heard the other party call his name, Tan Shio looked over. What he did not expect was that the female shop assistant was actually Yi Lianyan. Why are you here? Yi Lianyan was surprised to see Tan Shio, but she was still a little embarrassed and said, I'm short of money, so I came out to work to earn some living expenses. But you, why did you come out in the middle of the night? Tan Shio said, I'm just looking for a place with a friend to talk about something. I didn't expect to meet you here. If you're short of money, just tell me. You can ask for anything below 7 digits as long as you promise to work for me in the future. Yi Lianyan laughed involuntarily and said, Does this count as paying my salary in advance? I guess so, replied Tan Shio. Yi Lianyan slightly shook her head and said, A gentleman doesn't eat food given out of pity. I'm just a little girl. You can pay me my salary when I officially work for you. Not far away, the 2 male shop assistants curled their lips in unison, revealing disdainful looks on their faces. 7 digits? What a rich man. Just say it directly if you want to keep Yi Lianyan as your mistress. What a hypocrite. Both of them directly labeled Tan Shio in their hearts. Tan Shio turned his head and looked at Chen Zixue, who was smiling without saying anything behind him. He casually pointed to a table by the window and said, Yi Lianyan, give each of us an Odin and 2 bottles of drinks. All right, wait for me. Yi Lianyan smiled and left. Tan Shio and Chen Zixue came to the table by the window and took a seat. Then, Tan Xiao directly said, Chen Zixue, I've seen your company's design. It's really good, but I don't get it. Why do you dare to come to Shanghai before the complete design is completed? You even dare to look for me in the middle of the night? Well, I must come for benefits, Chen Zixue said with a smile. Benefits? Tan Xiao disdainfully said, everyone wants to get benefits. But do you think you can get a share of the pie by looking for me now? It's very simple. Wanting to win such a big project in the tender held by the magnificent Tang Corporation without completing the design is absolutely a fool's dream, said Chen Zixue. It's because I'm perfectly aware that no company will hand over the project to the other party without having completed the design. I'm gambling, and it turns out that my gamble is 40% correct. How so? Asked Tan Xiao with interest. The fact that you can leave your comfortable bed in the middle of the night proves that I've succeeded 20%. Chen Zixue said with a smile. You've seen the semi-finished design and brought me here, which also proves that I've succeeded another 20%. Altogether, it's exactly 40%. You're very confident, and I appreciate your confidence. Tan Xiao nodded. So, let's be more direct. You're only looking for me with the semi-finished design. What are you going to use to impress me? Chen Zixue had played the script in his mind countless times, so he confidently said, the magnificent Tang Corporation will build an industrial park and a HQ in Shanghai, but my Sinyuan Group will only earn 100 million yuan from the start to the end. Once we win this project and start the construction, your company can send someone to supervise the entire process of the project, including all the funds needed for the project. 100 million yuan? Tan Xiao frowned deeply. He didn't think that Chen Zixue's earnings were more than 100 million yuan, but it was too little. According to the result of the discussion between Tan Xiao and Kong Xia, the investment for the construction of the magnificent Tang Corporation's HQ and industrial park in Shanghai must be at least 10 billion yuan. Only earning 100 million yuan for a 10 billion yuan project was absolutely not something any construction company was willing to do. I don't think it's that simple, right? Tan Xiao subconsciously took out a cigarette. Chen Zixue quickly grabbed a lighter and personally lit it for Tan Xiao. Boss Tang, you're really wise to have such achievements at such a young age, said Chen Zixue. The construction of the magnificent Tang Corporation's HQ in Shanghai as well as the entire industrial park is something I want to use as a prelude or a generous gift. As long as Boss Tang can promise me that all the construction projects of the magnificent Tang Corporation will be handed over to my Sinyuan Group. Tan Xiao's complexion slightly changed and a chilling light flashed in his eyes. He took out his mobile phone and immediately dialed a number in front of Chen Zixue, saying, investigate all the senior executives of the magnificent Tang Corporation. I want to know who leaked the latest branch construction plan of the magnificent Tang Corporation. Affirmative. The voice of the Chief Intelligence Officer of the Everlasting Feast Hall came out of the phone. Chen Zixue maintained a calm smile all along and quietly waited for Tang Xiao to finish the call. Then he touched his nose and smilingly said, Boss Tang, I'm sure the investment won't be bigger than this project in Shanghai since your company has formulated such a development plan. Furthermore, you must implement this plan when the time comes and look for partners. To be honest, my Sinyuan Group has been engaged in the real estate business for more than 20 years. For us to be ranked among the top 10 in the domestic construction industry, we absolutely have an excellent engineering team and implementation ability. However, my company has now encountered a bottleneck. If we want to break this situation and make our development to the next level, we must find a shortcut and take an unconventional path. But your magnificent Tang Corporation can lead us out of this bottleneck. Then, I want to ask you something. Do you know how many branches and product sales stores my company is going to build? Asked Tan Xiao indifferently. I don't know. Chen Zixue shook his head and said, but I dare to bet that the number is definitely not small. Tan Xiao knocked on the table and squinted his eyes. Are you not afraid that I'll give you the HQ and industrial park project of Shanghai's magnificent Tang Corporation, but I'll directly go back on my words once you've completed it? I'm betting on your character, said Chen Zixue solemnly. Sometimes, character is simply not worth mentioning in the face of benefits, said Tan Xiao casually. I'm betting on your character, said Chen Zixue again. Also, I'll guarantee that my Sinuan group will never be greedy in the follow-up cooperation. We must earn what we should earn, but we won't ask for a penny more if we can't earn it. What I can guarantee is that compared to other construction companies, your magnificent Tang Corporation's branches and exclusive stores will absolutely spend a lot less money, and the quality and quantity of the project will be guaranteed. So, your so-called benefit is the quantity? Asked Tan Xiao indifferently. Chen Zixue firmly nodded. Tan Xiao nodded and didn't give any promise to Chen Zixue. Instead, he watched Ilianyan put 2 portions of Odin on the table and smilingly said, "This thing tastes good. I've eaten it here once. How about trying it?" Chen Zixue nodded. Although he was eating, he couldn't taste what it tasted like in his mouth. He silently calculated whether his chances of persuading Tan Xiao had increased, and if so, by how much. Tan Xiao quietly ate and occasionally glanced at Chen Zixue's face. He was secretly surprised and regretful after seeing the thoughtful expression on Chen Zixue's face. What surprised him was that Chen Zixue really had the ability. He was very satisfied with his conditions and had completely moved him. Regrettably, he found that Chen Zixue's ambition was too big during their exchange. Although he wasn't afraid of ambitious people, he didn't want to waste too many means on him. Can I ask you a question? Tan Xiao finished half a bowl of Odin and wiped his mouth with a napkin as he smilingly asked. Chapter 726. Chen Zixue swallowed the Odin in his mouth and picked up the water on the table to drink. Then he said, "I'll tell you everything I know. Please ask." A wolf and an eagle. If you have to choose, which one will you choose? Asked Tan Xiao. I'll choose the eagle, answered Chen Zixue without hesitation. But, asked Tan Xiao. Wolves are wild, fierce, and tenacious, just like you did 8 years ago. Although the eagle can fly high in the sky, it doesn't have the personality of a wolf and can only rely on its innate talent to survive in the food chain. Chen Zixue calmly said, "The eagle soars high in the sky and overlooks all living beings. I'd rather be aloof than to be a wolf, even if it's a pack of wolves." Tan Xiao faintly sighed inwardly. If it were a wolf, he could still tame it. But it was not so easy to tame an eagle. He had to worry about having his eyes pecked out to catch an eagle. Although Tan Xiao had the ability to protect himself, he didn't want to waste too much time. Not to mention, Chen Zixue had too much wealth. In case he became a cultivator, he would be competitive in terms of resources in the future. After returning to Earth, Tan Xiao found that there were indeed a lot of precious herbs on Earth, but they were limited and he didn't want to look for trouble. What a pity! Tan Xiao took out his wallet and put 100 yuan on the table. He then stood up and said, "Let's meet at the bidding meeting." After saying that, after bidding farewell to Ilianyan, he directly left the 24-hour convenience store. He recognized Chen Zixue's deal and his ability, but he didn't recognize him as a person. Chen Zixue didn't get up. His mind was filled with all kinds of thoughts as he recalled the words Tan Xiao said before he left. Although he had realized that Tan Xiao would most likely choose the Sinuan group to participate in the bidding meeting, but what did the last sentence, "what a pity," mean? He couldn't figure it out and felt a bit depressed. "Do you still want Odin, sir?" Ilianyan came to Chen Zixue with a smile and asked while cleaning up the disposable lunchboxes left by Tan Xiao. Chen Zixue slowly raised his head and looked at Ilianyan's beautiful appearance. His heart suddenly stirred and he asked, "You're called Ilianyan, right?" "I'm Chen Zixue, Sinuan." "Forget it, I'm a few years older than you. If you don't mind, just call me Big Brother Chen." Ilianyan smiled and said, "Hello, Brother Chen." Chen Zixue nodded and asked with a smile, "Can we sit down and talk?" Ilianyan complied and sat on the chair that Tan Xiao had originally sat on. She then asked with a smile, "Big Brother Chen should be a very capable person, right? I overheard your conversation just now. It seems like you're going to do business with Tan Xiao?" Chen Zixue found it funny and said, "Does it mean that I'm very capable to do business with Tan Xiao?" Ilianyan smiled and said, "Of course. Tan Xiao is very capable. If you are not capable, Why would he not sleep in the middle of the night and come here to discuss business with you? However, through your conversation just now, I realized that you should be begging him. Chen Zixue couldn't help laughing and said, "That's right. I'm begging him to give me a way to make money." Yi Lianyan giggled and said, "I believe that your dream will come true as long as you're sincere." Tan Xiu, he's very soft-hearted sometimes. You seem to know him very well? Chen Zixue was surprised. Yi Lianyan thought for a while and then shook her head. I don't know him very well, but I can sense the luminous spots on his body. As a matter of fact, Big Brother Chen is also quite handsome, but you don't seem to be as charming as Tang Xiu. But then, Yi Lianyan's words came to an abrupt halt. She seemed to realize that there were some things that she couldn't say and finally said with an awkward expression, "Back then, Tan Xiu was my savior." A smile outlined on the corner of Chen Zixue's mouth. His originally depressed mood turned a lot better. He was a calm and composed person and rarely talked nonsense with strangers. But at this moment, he had an impulse to chat more with Yi Lianyan, so he didn't hurry to leave and asked with a smile, "Tell me, what abilities does he have to be able to become the savior of a great beauty like you?" "Sorry, I can't tell you." Yi Lianyan let out a dry laugh. Chen Zixue looked straight at her. Yi Lianyan felt a bit scared under Chen Zixue's stare. She secretly regretted talking too much and hurriedly got up and said, "Big Brother Chen, I don't think you're a bad person, so I'll tell you something. Don't have any crooked thoughts about Tan Xiu, else you'll end up miserable." After saying that, she immediately returned to the cashier and no longer looked at Chen Zixue's direction. Chen Zixue slightly furrowed his brows. He retracted his gaze from Yi Lianyan and looked pensive. Yi Lianyan didn't want to say anything, so the matter behind it was definitely not simple. Although his curiosity was aroused, he suppressed it. Early morning the next day, Tan Xiu woke up from his sleep and found that the beauty beside him had disappeared. After he dressed and washed up, he came to the first floor and found some movements in the kitchen. "You got up so early?" Tan Xiu leaned on the door and asked with a smile while watching Kong Xia's back, who was wearing an apron and cooking. Kong Xia turned her head and smilingly said, "You got up early, huh? Why didn't you sleep more?" Tan Xiu smiled and said, "I have some serious business to do today, so I got up early to join in the fun. But today's bidding will still be presided over by you. I'll just be an observer." Kong Xia laughed and said, "You're such a leisurely big boss. Anyways, go to the dining room and wait for a while. Breakfast will be ready soon." Tan Xiu didn't leave and said, "Chen Zixue called me last night and we met last night." Kong Xia stared blankly and immediately turned around and asked, "Why did he look for you?" Tan Xiu said, "The Sinuan Group's design has yet to be completed, but they negotiated a deal with me. This person is very amazing. He is the most amazing business genius I have ever seen. Let me tell you something. The latest development plan of our magnificent Tang Corp has been leaked out." What? Kong Xia's complexion greatly changed, and a faint trace of anger emerged in her eyes. "I've already sent some people to investigate this matter," said Tan Xiu. "All the senior executives of our magnificent Tang Corp will be investigated, and I'm sure we'll get the results soon. What I want to tell you is that although the Sinuan Group's design is only half completed, I have seen it and it is very good. If there aren't any particularly outstanding designs or low prices in today's bidding, then choose the Sinuan Group." "This is not a trivial matter." Kong Xia frowned. "I understand what you mean." Tan Xiu nodded. However, Chen Zixue had told me exactly what he was thinking. He had an ulterior motive. Although the project in Shanghai is very large, he knows very well that it's too late for him to come up with a complete design. Hence, he didn't want to give up, so he put forward his other purpose. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu explained Chen Zixue's plan and finally said, "Since he gambled on me, then let him gamble. The company's skyscraper and industrial park will be handed over to the Sinuan Group. Once the project is completed, we can ignore him if he's too greedy." Kong Xia quietly pondered for a while and then forced a smile. "You're thinking too simply. This Chen Zixue has seen that we're going to set up a branch company and a unique exclusive store in the second half of the year, so he made this request. Don't forget that the magnificent Tang Corp's HQ and industrial park project will be completed in half a year. Even a year is not enough time. According to our discussion, it will be completed by the end of next year. I know. But the branch companies and exclusive stores in each province can't be built all at once, no? Tan Xiu lightly smiled. Then throw 1 or 2 provinces' projects to the Sinyuan Group. After that, we'll move on to the next province. If the Sinyuan Group dares to demand an exorbitant price and is too greedy, we can stop the cooperation in time. Kang Xia thought for a while and then smilingly said, "What you said makes sense. All right then. If there are no other surprises today, then let's set it to the Sinyuan Group." The breakfast was sumptuous and tasted great. After Tan Xiu and Kang Xia finished their breakfast and were about to go to the Paradise Club, an uninvited guest arrived and made Tan Xiu's plans for the day fall through. "Grandpa, why are you here?" Tan Xiu looked at the troubled Tang Guoxing and asked in surprise. Standing in front of Tang Guoxing, Kang Xia looked a bit uneasy. Tang Min, who was accompanying Tang Guoxing, was also a bit restless at the moment. She looked at Tan Xiu, wanting to say something but hesitating. Even though Kang Xia and Tan Xiu were living together, she didn't have the mood to say anything. "Xiu, let's go to your study room and talk." "All right." Tan Xiu led Tang Guoxing and Tang Min to the study room, while Kang Xia was responsible for serving tea. After the fragrant tea was served to Tang Guoxing and Tang Min, she was about to leave. "Sit there." Tan Xiu pointed to the chair inside the desk. Kang Xia stared blankly and hesitated for a moment before she obediently walked over. Tang Guoxing was a bit surprised. He looked at Kang Xia and then at Tan Xiu, and then slowly said, "Something big has happened. It's related to the life and death of hundreds of thousands of people, as well as the lives of a large number of overseas intelligence agents and military soldiers. It's also related to the survival and destruction of our Tang family's hidden forces." Tan Xiu was shaken inwardly. He simply couldn't believe his ears. It must be noted that this was an era of peace. How could such a serious matter happen? "Grandpa, what's the matter?" Tang Guoxing was a bit hesitant. He had been in the military for a lifetime and had seen countless people. Although he could see that the relationship between Kang Xia and Tan Xiu was unusual, he didn't know if he could trust Kang Xia. It was because what he was about to say was too important. It was important to the overall situation, and it was even more important to Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu had an outstanding mind. He noticed that Tang Guoxing was looking at Kang Xia again and immediately understood what he was thinking. Then he resolutely said, "Grandpa, Kang Xia is my woman. She's also a close family member and she's also a cultivator. Please speak freely if you have anything to say." Chapter 727. It was the first time for Tang Guoxing and Tang Min to hear Tan Xiu admit the fact that he had a woman. Even Mu Weining, who was well known to the outside world, was something Tan Xiu had never admitted. At this moment, the father and daughter exchanged glances and finally accepted Kang Xia completely. A cultivator. Kang Xia was also a cultivator, which meant that she was indeed Tan Xiu's most capable assistant. At this moment, the two of them realized that it was no wonder Tan Xiu could hand over the power of the magnificent Tang Corporation to Kang Xia. "Kang, you'll be the daughter-in-law of the Tang family from now on." Tang Guoxing turned to look at Kang Xia. After saying that, he directly turned his head and picked up the cigarette that Tan Xiu put down on the tea table. The daughter-in-law of the Tang family? At this moment, monstrous waves surged in Kang Xia's heart, and her delicate body couldn't help but tremble a few times. Great ecstasy accompanied by happiness made her feel unprecedentedly satisfied. She cared about Tan Xiu, and naturally, she also cared about the approval of the elders of the Tang family. Sometimes she would have a little fantasy, but she didn't expect that her dream would come true. Feelings needed to be promoted by external factors, and it also needed the sincere care of the loved ones. What Tan Xiu just said made her feel satisfied, and it deepened her feelings for Tan Xiu. Tang Guoxing lit the cigarette and took 2 deep puffs before he slowly said, "This matter is very troublesome. It can be said that it's a big problem. If it's not handled well, not only the entire country will suffer a loss, even our Tang family will suffer a huge loss. Grandpa, don't keep me guessing. Just tell me the specifics, said Tang Xiu. Do you know about Miss Source Island? Asked Tang Guosheng. I've never heard of it. Tan Xiu shook his head. Is there such an island in our country? I used to think that it was a good thing for the country to conceal the existence of this island, but I didn't expect that such a situation would happen. Tang Guosheng sighed deeply. As a matter of fact, Mist Source Island is an island that suddenly appeared 20 to 30 years ago in the sea area outside of Treasure Island, only 800 nautical miles away. When this island appeared, the country immediately sent a large number of troops, geologists, and biologists to land there. Do you know what's going on with that island, which is about the same size as the Treasure Island? It's all made up of towering mountains and primeval forests. At first, there were many ferocious beasts and a large number of precious minerals. Even the medicinal herbs growing in it, according to the judgment of some highly respected old Chinese doctors, were thousands of years old. I've been there before. There's even a palace on top of a mountain in the center of the island. It's an ancient palace, but no one has been able to climb that mountain. No one has been able to take a look inside the palace. After the country's secret development, Mist Source Island has been completely controlled by our country. There are a lot of elite soldiers stationed there, and at the same time, the families of some soldiers and researchers who went there in the early days also live there. Now, the entire Mist Source Island has hundreds of thousands of residents. At this point, Tang Guosheng stopped and took another puff of his cigarette. Tan Xiu was shocked. How is it possible that the existence of Mist Source Island can be so secretive given the current situation? Don't you think the current media power is enough to expose the situation there? It's because the existence of Mist Source Island has been exposed that many countries have been coveting it, sighed Tang Guosheng. More than a decade ago, many countries have been trying to occupy it. But our country has stationed troops there, and it's also part of our country's sea area, so they have never succeeded. Treasure Island also tried to meddle, but it was suppressed and they could only choose to remain silent. If that's the case, then what exactly is the crisis? Asked Tan Xiu. Those foreign countries have always been coveting Mist Source Island. They even tried every means possible to send people to sneak into the island. But there were no major problems because the coastline was heavily guarded. Tang Guosheng suppressed his anger. But in recent years, some forces secretly supported by those foreign countries have been carrying out intense infiltration work. What's more, those foreign forces have really infiltrated the island, and the number is not small. Just 6 days ago, a resident of Mist Source Island suddenly fell into a coma. After the medical staff there examined him, they found that it was a virus. The infected patient had been in contact with a lot of people, so all of them were infected. Moreover, the degree of infection has been increasing, and the virus is spreading at an extremely terrifying speed. On the 4th day, 80% of the people in the entire Mist Source Island have been infected. Up until today, even the garrison there has been infected. Hundreds of thousands of people. Although the country's top virus experts were sent there a few days ago, they were helpless. Just yesterday, the old divine Dr. Gui Jianqiu, who is stationed in the imperial capital, also rushed there. How did this virus come about? Asked Tan Xiu with a frown. Someone from the world's most dangerous organization, the Stygian Club, sneaked into the island and injected the virus into the first infected person, said Tang Guosheng in a deep voice. The foreign black market is selling antivirus strengthening drugs. Those who have been injected with the drug in advance will not be infected by the virus again. Therefore, thousands of people from the Stygian Club and other forces have landed on Mist Source Island in the past 7 days. The garrison has had several fierce battles with them, and both sides eventually suffered losses. Some of them are very powerful. Tan Xiu slammed his fist on the table and angrily said, "It's this damn Stygian Club again. It seems that its existence is indeed a scourge." "You know about the Stygian Club?" asked Tang Guosheng with a serious expression. A cold light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he nodded and said, "I've dealt with the Stygian Club's people several times, and they suffered losses every time." "Grandpa, Do you mean you want me to go to Miss Source Island? I do have such a plan, but it's very dangerous there now. Tang Guisheng nodded and said, on one hand, there's the threat of the virus, and on the other hand, there are various foreign forces eyeing covetously. I'm also worried. Tan Xiao interrupted Tang Guisheng and solemnly said, don't worry. It's just a virus. It won't harm me. As for those foreign forces, unless they use nuclear bombs, they won't be able to threaten me much. Tang Guisheng nodded without a word and bitterly said, there are people from our Tang family on Mist Source Island. I instructed your second grandpa to secretly set up a martial arts training camp on the island. After you get there, you can contact the people from the state first, and then secretly go to Tongzhuang Martial School to find Tang Han. Who's Tang Han? Asked Tan Xiao. She's your uncle's eldest daughter, answered Tang Guisheng. Tan Xiao was shocked and asked in surprise, my uncle has an eldest daughter? How come I didn't know about it? Tang Guisheng forced a smile and said, in the past, in order to be stationed on Mist Source Island secretly, I announced to the public that your uncle's eldest daughter died at the age of 4 and was secretly sent to Mist Source Island. After training her since childhood, she successfully took over the affairs of Tongzhuang Martial School at the age of 18. It's been 11 years now. That child can only quietly return to the imperial capital once every 2 years. She's 29 years old now, but the number of times she came back is only 12. Our Tang family owes her too much. Tan Xiao felt deep veneration for this cousin he had never met. He nodded and said, I got it, Grandpa. Tang Min took out 2 things from her bag. One was a small green book with only 2 words written on it, security. The other was a black badge with only a blood drop pattern on it. This green book is the certificate of the State Security Department, Xiao. I've already done it for you. This badge is the symbol of our Tang family's secret forces. Take it to see your sister and she'll naturally believe you, said Tang Min in a low voice. Tan Xiao nodded. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, Grandpa, who else wants me to go to Mist Source Island besides you? Tang Guisheng and Tang Min exchanged glances. Then, Tang Guisheng forced a smile and said, sure enough, I can't hide it from you. It's the one on top. Which one? The one with the highest position. Tan Xiao squinted his eyes and asked, are there any benefits? Just one sentence. Let bygones be bygones and be loyal to the country, said Tang Guisheng. Tan Xiao was shaken inwardly. He subconsciously grabbed a cigarette and lit it up. After taking a few deep puffs, he grinned and said, this old man is compromising and also handing me an imperial sword. If my guess is correct, he won't take back this green book later, right? Indeed. Tang Guisheng knew that his grandson was smart and immediately nodded with a smile. Tan Xiao got up and said, if that's the case, then I'll take this job. When will you leave? The sooner the better, said Tang Guisheng. The military base in Shanghai has prepared a military helicopter and can take off at any time. Tan Xiao looked at Kong Xia and said, I can't accompany you for today's matter. Also, don't disclose my whereabouts to anyone. Kong Xia got up with a deep worry. She nodded and exhorted, safety first. I got it. Tan Xiao replied. Tang Guisheng didn't hurry to leave, and neither did Tang Min. They looked at Tan Xiao's back as he quickly left the house and sighed at the same time. Shanghai Garrison Base. Hu Jinfeng, dressed in military uniform, had been waiting for a long time. He was the Chief of Staff of the General Staff Department of the Mist Source Island Garrison with the rank of Senior Colonel. Originally, he was going to take a vacation and return to the imperial capital, but a major event happened in Mist Source Island. He received an order to escort Tang Guisheng to Shanghai and to stand by at the Shanghai Garrison Base. Stand by and wait for someone. He didn't know who he was waiting for, nor could he figure out the identity of the person who made him a chief of staff of a senior colonel. Wait. The 4 black SUVs came from a distance and parked near the helipad of the military helicopter. As a big man in a black suit opened the door, Hu Jinfeng's eyes fell on the rear door of the 3rd car. He knew that the person who could directly drive the car from the outside and come here was definitely a big shot. Chapter 728. Tan Xiu did not intend to bring a lot of people to Mist Source Island this time. In addition to Mo All, who usually followed him, there were only 10 other bodyguards. Although there were many unknown enemies, he was confident that he could kill them all. However, on the way to the garrison base, he made a few phone calls. In addition to asking for leave from his homeroom teacher, Han Qingwu, he also informed Shuiyu. In addition, Li Laozhan had been busy recently and said that he would find time to have a meal together. Originally, he wanted to treat Li Laozhan to a meal, but he was in a hurry to leave Shanghai, so he had to call him in advance. As soon as Tan Xiu got out of the car, he saw Hu Zhenfeng, who was tall and straight in a military uniform. After walking straight to him, Hu Zhenfeng directly took out a green book and said, "I'm Tan Xiu. We need to go to Mist Source Island immediately. This is the certificate." Hu Zhenfeng took the green book and glanced at it a few times. He then nodded and said, "I've received orders from the higher-ups. This military helicopter will take us to Nansha province, and then we must take a ship to Mist Source Island. If the journey goes smoothly, we can arrive before evening." Tan Xiu frowned and asked, "Can't we fly there directly?" Hu Zhenfeng shook his head and said, "According to the provisions of the military aircraft agreement, no flights are allowed to travel to and from Mist Source Island. The Air Defense Department has set up an intercontinental arms system on Mist Source Island. Once you approach within 50 kilometers of Mist Source Island, you will be regarded as an enemy and will immediately open fire." Tan Xiu asked, "Not even a military helicopter? Don't tell me there aren't even fighter jets there?" "Is it because it's not suitable?" Hu Zhenfeng shook his head. "Why do you say that?" asked Tan Xiu. Hu Zhenfeng forced a smile and said, "There's a strange magnetic field shrouding a dozen kilometers around Mist Source Island. Any unit instrument would malfunction once it entered there. In addition, Mist Source Island is surrounded by a deep layer of fog. Since the island was discovered, the fog only dissipates for 2 hours a day, and only during those 2 hours can one enter and exit Mist Source Island." "Array formation?" Tan Xiu pondered for a few seconds before he nodded and said, "Forget it. Let's go now. Can this helicopter fit so many of us?" Hu Zhenfeng said, "Excluding the 2 pilots in the cockpit, the cabin can only accommodate 10 people. Since I don't know how many of you are coming, I only asked the military to prepare this helicopter. But I can apply for another helicopter now." "Sorry for the trouble." Tan Xiu nodded. 2 minutes later, 2 military SUVs roared over and quickly stopped nearby. As 7 fully armed soldiers in camouflage uniforms got off the vehicles, a lean man at the front put the camouflage bag in his hand on the ground and saluted Hu Zhenfeng. "Yu Shuqing, captain of the Phantom Special Combat Squad, reporting to the chief." After Hu Zhenfeng returned the greeting, he said with a smile, "After receiving the order from the higher-ups, I knew that I would see you, my old friend. Your Phantom Special Combat Squad has made great contributions to the country all these years. The old chief has praised you a lot in front of me." Yu Shuqing smiled and said, "Serving the country is our duty." Hu Zhenfeng nodded and glanced at the other 6 members of the Phantom Special Combat Squad. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "I'm completely relieved to have your Special Combat Squad following me to Mist Source Island. Shuqing, let me introduce you. This is Tan Xiu, the person in charge of the Mist Source Island incident. All the members of your Phantom Special Combat Squad are responsible for accepting his command." Yu Shuqing furrowed his brows, but he still saluted Tan Xiu. "Yu Shuqing, captain of the Phantom Special Combat Squad, reporting to the chief." Behind him, the other 6 members of the Phantom Special Combat Squad had their complexions slightly changed and a bit of anger could be seen in their eyes. After coming here, they found that Mo Ao and the others around Tan Xiu had extraordinary temperaments and a faint smell of blood, which was a big threat even for them. However, Tan Xiu was too young and they had always acted alone. Now that they were suddenly assigned to work under an unfamiliar young man, they were very dissatisfied. "I don't need other helpers, actually." Tan Xiu nodded indifferently and said, "But since you've accepted the order, it's not good for me to refuse. After we arrive at Mist Source Island, I'll explain to the chief military officer there to let you stay at the base." A cold light flashed in Yu Shuqing's eyes as he indifferently said, "You're crazy." Tan Xiu shook his head and no longer paid attention to him. He greeted Hu Zhenfeng and then boarded the military helicopter with Mo, Jin Shi, and the others, leaving only the two experts of the everlasting feast hall behind. "Boss, I've dealt with this Phantom Special Combat Squad before," said Xue Sha in a low voice after taking a seat in the cabin next to Tan Xiu. "When?" asked Tan Xiu with furrowed brows. "When I found Mouse before, one of the members of the Phantom Special Combat Squad was following us and I intercepted him halfway," said Xue Sha. "He didn't see my face, so he didn't know that I've dealt with them." Tan Xiu suddenly understood. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he said, "It seems that they're the ones who fought with the SOE company in Shanghai. If not for our special identities, I'm afraid this Phantom Special Combat Squad is already very powerful for ordinary people. I can wipe out their entire squad if I act," sneered Xue Sha. "Don't talk nonsense." Tan Xiu snappily scolded with a smile, "They're just ordinary people. Who do you think you are? Do you have the nerve to compare yourself with them?" Xue Sha let out a hollow laugh and lowered his head, no longer speaking. Below the military helicopter, Mo Xiaonan, one of the members of the Phantom Special Combat Squad, glanced at the two big men, Shui Gui and Yishir San, and immediately asked, "What are they doing, Chief?" "Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." "I don't know." Hu Zhenfeng shook his head. Mo Xiaonan said, "You don't know?" Mo Xiaonan said, "Then you want us to listen to the orders of that Tang brat? Isn't this some kind of international joke?" "That's an order," said Hu Zhenfeng in a deep voice. Yishir San shot a cold look at Mo Xiaonan and coldly said, "If you dare to insult our boss again, I'll kill you on the spot even if you're from the military." "Boss? I thought it was some big shot, but it turns out to be a boss," sneered Mo Xiaonan. "What are the higher-ups thinking? People who want us to listen to their orders? Also, there are bodyguards who like to talk nonsense. What a joke." A displeased look also appeared on Yu Shuqing's face, but he thought about it more. He felt that it was impossible for a pure businessman to have the qualifications to come here and even have the right to order them. He glared at Mo Xiaonan and said in a deep voice, "Shut up." Mo Xiaonan coldly snorted and provocatively looked at Yishir San and Shui Gui, no longer speaking. 20 minutes later, another military helicopter was ready and soon disappeared into the clouds as Hu Zhenfeng and the others boarded. 2 hours later, 2 military helicopters arrived at the Nanxia Province Garrison Base. Furthermore, the Nanxia Province Garrison Base also sent 6 military jeeps to send everyone to the military port. The Freedom Liner. After boarding the medium-sized liner, Hu Zhenfeng exchanged some words with the people on the liner and then directly set sail to Mist Source Island. From Nanxia Province to Mist Source Island, they needed to bypass the Bao Island, so it took a lot of time to sail. It wasn't until the evening that the liner entered a misty sea area. Interesting. Standing on the bow deck, Tan Xiu looked around with his hands behind his back. He could clearly feel a special energy drifting around him, which should be the energy carried by the mist. However, this energy drifting had a positive and stable pattern, which was not formed naturally but caused by an array. "Tan Xiu, pay attention to your safety later. This sea is not peaceful." Hu Zhenfeng came out of the cabin with a faint smile and stood side by side with Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu turned his head and asked, "Tell me, how is it not peaceful?" "There are fierce beasts in this sea," said Hu Zhenfeng. "Do you know what fierce beasts are?" "They are the kind of wild beasts with simple intelligence, but their attack power is many times stronger than wild beasts. Especially in this misty area, there are black sharks living there. Fortunately, our ship is made of iron. If a wooden ship passed here, those black sharks would have bitten through the wooden ship." Tan Xiu asked, "Has no one ever hunted these black sharks?" "How could they not be hunted?" Hu Zhenfeng said, "But there are a lot of these black sharks and they are social creatures. Every time they appear, they will form groups of at least hundreds of them. Our garrison has sent troops to clean them up many times, but we always feel that we can't kill them all and destroy them all." Tan Xiu nodded and lightly said, "After we solve the crisis on Mist Source Island, I'll send some people to help clean it up. After this battle, I'm afraid that the news of the existence of Mist Source Island can no longer be blocked. We really need to solve this crisis before ordinary people come here. Hu Junfeng's mouth twitched twice as he glanced at Tan Xiu with a trace of contempt. He had seen a lot of capable people and also met a lot of people who could brag, but none of them could be as arrogant as Tan Xiu. Even the army couldn't clean up those black sharks, yet this Tang Xiu had never seen one, yet he dared to talk nonsense here. He really couldn't understand why the higher-ups would send such a guy to solve the crisis on Mist Source Island. The liner moved forward. Soon, the liner passed through the misty area and the island looming in the distance could be seen in a wide field of vision. When the liner docked on the island, Hu Junfeng personally brought a batch of masks. I don't need them. Tan Xiu shook his head lightly. Don't mess around, Tan Xiu. Hu Junfeng angrily said. The virus on Mist Source Island is very serious. If the ship wasn't equipped with gas masks, I would have made everyone wear them. Quickly take them and put them on. We're going to disembark. Tan Xiu didn't take them. He walked to the edge of the deck and instantly sprinted forward. The distance of 6 or 7 meters was crossed by him in a single step and his feet directly landed on the shore road. Mo Au and the others also followed him and jumped to the shore one by one. Chapter 729. On the liner's deck, Hu Junfeng's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets when he saw Tan Xiu and his men easily jump 6 or 7 meters away. The world-long jump record was 8.95 meters, but that was due to the inertia of sprinting at full speed. Although the deck was only 6 or 7 meters away from the shore, the seemingly easy jump without any run-up was simply beyond Hu Junfeng's imagination. They're really monsters. They can jump so far with just a lift of their legs. If they were to participate in the Olympic long jump, they would definitely break the world record. Hu Junfeng's contempt for Tan Xiu was reduced a lot. The members of the Phantom Special Combat Squad, including Captain Yu Shuqing, were also surprised by the long jump ability of Tan Xiu and his men. Although they could also jump ashore, it was definitely not as easy as Tan Xiu and his men. Captain, it seems that these guys are experts. Chen Yangfan, who had always been proud of his speed, approached Yu Shuqing and spoke with a solemn expression. I've long noticed that they are experts, but I didn't expect them to be more powerful than I expected. Yu Shuqing nodded. I'm afraid you're the only member of our Phantom Special Combat Squad who can barely do this. Chen Yangfan forced a smile and said, they need a few run-up steps, else it'll be a bit difficult. Since they can be appointed by the higher-ups to solve the crisis here, I don't think they are bad, said Yu Shuqing. All of you, stay alert and don't have any unpleasant encounters with them. All right. Several people nodded. On the shore, a medium-sized bus that could accommodate more than 20 people was parked. There was only a young man in leather clothes and a mask standing at the door. When he saw Hu Junfeng, his eyes suddenly lit up. He strode forward and saluted, Chief of Staff, you're finally back. Our garrison is in big trouble. What's the situation now? Asked Hu Junfeng. How many people in the army have been infected by the virus? The young man said bitterly, a total of 88 people from the 2 ships patrolling the nearby waters are not infected. The rest are all suffering from a fever and symptoms of weakness. We've taken various antiviral drugs, but none of them have any effect. The preventive drugs we bought from the foreign black market came too late. Apart from those 2 ships, do the other officers and soldiers still have combat ability? Asked Hu Junfeng hurriedly. The young man nodded and said, it's fine for a short time, but it can only last for 3 to 5 days at most. Chief of Staff, the first person infected with the virus died 6 hours ago. There are still dozens of people on the island who are seriously ill and could die at any time. Hu Junfeng's expression slightly changed as he asked in a deep voice, how many people on the island are uninfected? An angry look flashed across the young man's face as he said, there are more than 1,000 people, and more than 90% of them are from some foreign forces. They took preventive medicine before coming, so they weren't infected. Division Commander Yang didn't want us to have any conflict with them. That's why those people were so arrogant on the island, but they didn't do anything out of line. are scattered all over the island, surveying the island's mineral resources and gathering all kinds of information about the island. A chilling light flashed in Hu Jinfeng's eyes as he asked, "Did you bring the gas mask?" The young man nodded and said, "Yes, 30 in total." Hu Jinfeng turned to look at Tan Xiao, Yu Shuqing, and the others and said in a deep voice, "We didn't take any preventive medicine before, so we must wear gas masks to avoid getting infected." Chief of Staff, we bought 100 preventive medicines from those foreign forces. We don't need to worry about getting infected after taking them. We just need to wear a mask. After saying that, he poured out a lot of black pills from the small bottle he carried and handed them to Hu Jinfeng. Hu Jinfeng's eyes lit up as he grabbed one and immediately stuffed it into his mouth. He then handed it to Yu Shuqing and the others and watched them take it. However, when he gave it to Tan Xiao refused it. "We don't need it." Tan Xiao didn't want to take this unknown medicine because he firmly believed that the infectious virus posed no threat to cultivators like them. "Tan Xiao, you may be the person in charge of solving this crisis, but you can't be arrogant and conceited," said Hu Jinfeng angrily. "Since this preventive medicine is effective, you must take it for the sake of safety." "You're not my superior, so I don't need to obey your orders," said Tan Xiao indifferently. "All right, time is of the essence. Let's hurry up." A burst of rage surged out from the bottom of Hu Jinfeng's heart, but he forcefully suppressed it. He couldn't figure out the origin of Tan Xiao and the others. He even felt that Tan Xiao and the others were not from the Security Bureau. On the road, Tan Xiao learned about Divine Dr. Gui Jianchou's situation from the young man who drove the car. He learned that Gui Jianchou had also taken the preventive medicine and was now studying the virus on the island. However, he just arrived yesterday and hadn't found any results yet. After driving for more than 2 hours, the bus entered a rugged mountain road. After more than half an hour of bumpy journey, it finally drove into an olive-green military camp. Yang Chuxiong was the commander of the garrison. Although he was only a division commander, he had the rank of Major General. He was not old, only 46 years old. He had a stocky build and looked like a fierce tiger general. "Welcome, Tan Xiao." The moment Yang Chuxiong saw Tan Xiao, he looked slightly surprised. Although he had received the order from his superior and learned that Tan Xiao had come to help solve the crisis, he didn't expect that Tan Xiao was really as young as the rumors said. Hu Jinfeng might not know about Tan Xiao's past achievements, but Yang Chuxiong had investigated him through his authority and found that Tan Xiao was not simple at all. "You're Division Commander Yang, right?" Tan Xiao slightly nodded. "I've learned about the situation on the way here. It's terrible, isn't it?" "It's more than terrible. It's simply terrible," said Yang Chuxiong bitterly. "If we can't solve the virus in the next 2 or 3 days, I'm afraid more than half of the hundreds of thousands of people on the island will die." 2 or 3 days? What about Divine Dr. Gui Jianchou? Tan Xiao asked bluntly. "Take me to see him." "He's in the temporary laboratory inside," said Yang Chuxiong immediately. "We've collected the blood samples of the infected people. Divine Dr. Gui Jianchou is going all out to study the nature of the virus and find a way to concoct an antidote." 10 minutes later, Tan Xiao saw the legendary Divine Dr. Gui Jianchou. He was wearing a white coat and a pair of white gloves. He was in a temporary laboratory, using a pair of tweezers to pick up a small piece of rotten flesh and observe it. "Hello, I'm Tan Xiao." Tan Xiao stepped forward and introduced himself. Gui Jianchou was a very thin man with a solemn expression on his wrinkled face. After hearing Tan Xiao's words, he slightly furrowed his brows and carefully observed Tan Xiao a few times. Then he slowly nodded and said, "You're the young divine Dr. Tan Xiao of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. You're a medical grandmaster that makes my 2 proud and arrogant disciples feel ashamed of their inferiority. I've paid attention to some of the cases you've treated, especially your acupuncture technique. It's simply magical and amazing." "You're overpraising me, Senior Gui Jianchou," said Tan Xiao politely. "Senior Gui Jianchou, since you came earlier than me, can you tell me the results of your research? Also, what about the virus? I've been studying medicine all my life, and I've encountered countless kinds of diseases. But this virus is very strange. It has a wide range of transmission routes. It's transmitted through saliva, blood, air, water. Any healthy ordinary person has the possibility of being infected as long as they are within 10 meters of the infected person. Of course, I've also studied Western medicine and have some achievements in it. But it's very difficult to extract a virus sample no matter what method is used to extract it. Also, I've tried hundreds of methods and used a large number of medicinal herbs to conduct research, but none of them can kill this virus. Its activity is too strong. Tan Xiao was silent for a moment. He then flipped his hand and took out a porcelain bottle. He handed it to Gui Jianchou and said, "This is a kind of medicine I've refined. It has a very good effect in tempering the human body. Put this medicine into it and see if it has any effect." Gui Jianchou looked surprised, but he still took the porcelain bottle. He carefully poured a drop from the inside and dripped it on the rotten flesh. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It was as though a strong sulfuric acid was poured on the rotten flesh. The rotten flesh rotted at a very fast speed and eventually turned into a puddle of pungent black liquid. Gui Jianchou frowned and forced a smile. Not only is it ineffective, but it will also cause the infected person to die. Tan Xiao squinted his eyes. He grabbed a pen and paper on the table and quickly wrote down a series of medicinal herbs names: honeysuckle, wild lily, poison string, black scorpion, golden cicada shell. "Oh, come in," Tan Xiao shouted in a deep voice. Oh pushed the door and came in asking, "What's your order, boss?" Tan Xiao handed him the list and seriously said, "Go find these medicinal herbs immediately and send them here as fast as possible. Ask Division Commander Yang to help. He's more familiar with this place than you." "Understood." Mo took the list and left. Gui Jianchou's eyes retracted from Mo's back and asked with a confused expression, "Tang? I'll call you Little Tang. What's the prescription you gave me?" "The body-refining medicine I concocted has the opposite effect of the medicinal herbs I just gave you," said Tan Xiao. "I want to try the opposite effect to see if it will be effective against this virus." Gui Jianchou pondered for a while before he nodded and said, "It's quite possible. I also used medicinal herbs to decoct the medicine before, but it didn't have any effect on the rotten flesh after being poured on it. When things reach an extreme, they will go in the opposite direction. Maybe the prescription you just gave will have an effect." Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "I'm just trying to find a doctor in a desperate situation. I don't want to let go of any possibility. To tell you the truth, my medical skills are somewhat special, but there's one thing I'm sure of. It's absolutely incomparable to yours. You haven't studied the nature of the virus and haven't researched the medicine to treat the infected, so I'm afraid I'm even worse." Chapter 730. Don't belittle yourself, Little Tang. Gui Jianchou shook his head and said, "Perhaps it's because of your special medical skills that you were able to take an unconventional approach and finally find a solution. That's right, I just had a new idea. Let's study it before we find the herbs you need. What do you think?" Gui Jianchou spoke his idea and the two immediately began experimenting. After failing, the two continued to discuss and experiment. Proposals emerged one after another, but the experiments failed again and again. Time passed. As a cultivator, Tang Xiao was able to withstand the prolonged research, but Gui Jianchou, on the other hand, was already quite old. Although he had been paying attention to recuperation all these years, he still had no choice but to stop the research due to exhaustion and ran to the next room to sleep for a few hours. The next afternoon, the death data of the infected people on Mist Source Island had been recalculated. The number of infected people who died from the virus had increased to 562. Just as the data was sent to Tan Xiao, Mo hurriedly returned with the herbs Tan Xiao needed. "All the herbs are here, boss." Mo placed 2 suitcases in front of Tan Xiao and wiped the sweat on his forehead. Tan Xiao nodded and immediately began to refine the medicine. After several hours of refining, a pitch-black pill was successfully refined. Under the watchful eyes of divine Dr. Gui Jianchou, he ground the pill and sprinkled it on the rotten flesh. This time, the rotten flesh didn't immediately corrode and fester, but it didn't have much effect on the virus. "Lil Tang, Did you notice that after I sprinkled the medicinal powder you refined, black lines appeared on the rotten flesh? I used a magnifying glass to observe it. Those black lines are composed of countless extremely fine active particles, as though they are alive. In Western medicine, they can be called bacteria, said Gui Jianchou slowly. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed in his mind and he hurriedly said, if they're bacteria, then they're viruses and bacteria. There are many ways to sterilize them. We can consider the electric current sterilization method. Electric current sterilization method? Gui Jianchou stared blankly for a moment. He suddenly thought of something and immediately said, 42 years ago, the eccentric doctor in the Northeast, Gao Yitong, invented the electric current sterilization method. It uses static electricity to encircle and suppress viruses and bacteria. Although this method was rarely used in reality, it was still popular in some mountainous areas in the Northeast. I think we can give it a try. Give it a try. Tan Xiu did as he thought of it. To his pleasant surprise, after he used the electric current to sterilize the rotten meat, the black lines in the rotten meat continued to burn, turning into a pungent black smoke. However, the rotten meat gradually became brighter. Through the research of Gui Jianchou and Tan Xiu, they discovered that the virus and bacteria were actually suppressed. It's effective, but the speed at which the viruses and bacteria divide and grow is too fast. Although the electric current sterilization can kill a large number of viruses and bacteria, it's very difficult to eradicate them. If the human body is constantly electrified, it can temporarily remove the worry of death and temporarily suppress it, Gui Jianchou said excitedly. Let's find a live experiment. In addition, we need to generate static electricity into the human body, but it will not harm human health. Strive to let every infected person use it. Tan Xiu nodded heavily. All right. There were 4 common ways to generate static electricity, namely, charge migration, braking electrification, induction electrification, and contact separation. Among them, the most suitable method to be used in a large number of people was contact separation, such as chemical fiber underwear, carpets, cushions, wallpaper, and other items. After contact and separation, static electricity would be generated. In addition, when household appliances are in use, they will also produce static electricity or the outer shell will carry static electricity, such as the television screen or computer screen. Phew! After temporarily studying this plan, Tan Xiu did not hesitate to reflect the situation to Yang Chuxiong, and then through the TV broadcast, radio promotion, mobile phone information dissemination, and military soldiers running around to spread the news, on the 3rd night after Tan Xiu landed on Miss Source Island, the virus crisis was finally temporarily solved, and countless people who were on the verge of death finally hung on the line of death. In the terrain of Mist Source Island, there were only 4 areas suitable for living, which were continuously opened up by the people who lived here for decades. Between the mountains, there were some villages, but according to official statistics, there were only 24. Every village had a population of at most a few thousand, and at least a few hundred. Python City, Wolf City, Doublebrook City, and Mixed Summit City. The population of these 4 major urban areas, the largest Python City had 1 to 200,000 people, while the smallest Mixed Summit City had only 70 to 80,000 people. After decades of development, now all 4 cities had been opened up, and there were even a number of main roads and dozens of small roads and mountain roads connected together. Mixed Summit City. Rows of collective village buildings were moving in a neat and orderly manner. The bustling commercial streets were almost no different from the outside world cities. Although this place was very secretive with the secret support of the country, there was still a steady flow of materials from the outside world. People living here, in addition to relying on the government to eat, can also collect medicinal materials, find minerals and other resources, and even have many private factories. On a street in the north of the city, dozens of burly men in suits surrounded the 5 buildings. Not even a drop of water could trickle through. From time to time, many people came from all over and hurriedly entered the 5 buildings. In the middle building, Keith Moore, a high-ranking member of the Stygian Club, was smoking the world's top Cuban cigar and tasting delicious coffee while quietly listening to the report of his trusted subordinate. We've investigated that the person who invented the electrostatic therapy is called Tan Xiu. According to the investigation, he's the behind-the-scenes boss of China's magnificent Tang Corporation. He's also a Chinese medicine practitioner known as the Young Divine Doctor. We haven't investigated how he came to Mist Source Island. Further, the electrostatic sterilization method can only temporarily suppress the virus, but it can't completely cure it. He's also a great help to us, said the thin middle-aged man. Keith Moore's eyes flickered as he nodded and said, "You're right. We didn't bring the virus to destroy all the humans on this island. We just wanted to destroy some of them, and then control the fate of most of them in their fear, so that we can order them around in the future. However, there's a problem with the environment here, which caused the virus outbreak to multiply and eventually made us lose control. The appearance of Tan Xiu is a relief to us." "What should we do now, sir?" asked the thin middle-aged man. Keith Moore stroked his chin and coldly said, "Send an assassin to capture that Tan Xiu. Since he can come up with the electrostatic sterilization method, it shows that he's a great talent. Maybe we can use him in the future. Also, don't relax in surveying the mountain range around Mixed Summit City. We've only surveyed a small lithium mine. The more mineral deposits we survey, the bigger our harvest will be when we negotiate with the Chinese authorities in the future." "Understood. I'll arrange it immediately. But what should we do in case that Tan Xiu resists?" asked the thin middle-aged man. "We can't kill him even if he resists," said Keith Moore in a deep voice. "Since he can find a way to suppress the darkening virus in such a short time, I'm sure he can develop a new antidote. We'll need the antidote when we negotiate with the Chinese authorities in the future." "I understand," the thin middle-aged man replied and turned to leave. Keith Moore watched as the thin middle-aged man left. Then he clapped his hands and two pale young men in black windbreakers appeared in front of him. "You two, take the Spectre team and quietly follow him. That Tan Xiu's identity isn't simple. I believe the Chinese military will protect him. If the assassination fails, you two will take over the arrest." "Understood." The two young men agreed, and their figures instantly disappeared from the spot. In a valley dozens of kilometers south of Twin Brook City, lush trees, fresh flowers, and wild animals could be seen everywhere. It was a scene full of vitality. Compared to the lifeless atmosphere in Twin Brook City, there were dozens of military tents set up here. A dark-skinned foreign old man in a black tuxedo stood on a slope south of the tents, leaning on a golden crutch. Behind him were two men and two women in black leather clothes, shrouded in a chilling aura. It was completely out of place with the lively scene in the valley. Even some wild animals avoided them from afar. "Shu, how's the preparation of the virus gene conversion catalyst?" asked the foreign old man all of a sudden. Behind him, the man on the far left replied with a hoarse voice, "It's only the last step. It's estimated to be ready in 3 days." The foreign old man nodded with satisfaction and said, "That Tan Xiu of China who suddenly came to Mist Source Island does have some skills. He's much better than those idiots under Keith Moore. Our pyramid organization has come here and ruined the Stygian Club's plan, so we must be prepared to tear all pretense of cordiality with them. Send some people to make trouble for them. They want to explore the mineral deposits, so we must not let them have their way." "Get it done at once," said Shu respectfully. The foreign old man touched his chin and said, "Immediately take some men to kill that Tan Xiu after giving the order. It's a relief that he found a way to temporarily suppress the darkening virus. But we must never let him find the real cure for the darkening virus, nor let the Stygian Club capture him." "I can go alone, sir," said Shu with a hideous grin. The foreign old man snorted coldly and said, "There's an old saying in China that it's better to be safe than sorry. I know you have the strength, but don't lose your life because of your arrogance." Chapter 731. At the military encampment on Mist Source Island, Tan Xiu and Gui Jianqiu finally heaved a sigh of relief after finding a way to suppress the darkening virus. Yang Chuxiong, the highest-ranking officer on Mist Source Island, excitedly held a celebration banquet after being infected for several days and having the darkening virus suppressed. Night fell. With the end of the celebration banquet, Tan Xiu decided to go out for a stroll and see his cousin, Tang Han. When he told Yang Chuxiong about his intention to leave the military encampment, Yang Chuxiong strongly dissuaded him. Divine Dr. Tang, the situation on Mist Source Island is very chaotic now. Not to mention the panic caused by the darkening virus, which has led to many pessimists causing trouble, just the foreign forces are all arrogant and despotic, with malicious intentions. I'm afraid you'll be in trouble if you run into them. I received the order to solve the problem on Mist Source Island, not just to study the infectious disease. Tan Xiu shook his head. Division Commander Yang, if I stay here because I'm afraid of danger, what's the point of the one at the top to send me here? The one at the top? Yang Chuxiong stared blankly for a moment. His pupils suddenly shrunk and a horrified look appeared in his eyes. Although he received an order to assist Tan Xiu in solving the crisis on Mist Source Island, he didn't know which big shot issued the order. At this moment, the one Tan Xiu mentioned gave him a huge shock. Is it really number one? Yang Chuxiong was silent for a while before he hesitantly asked. Yes, it's him. Tan Xiu nodded. Yang Chuxiong looked at Tan Xiu with a complicated expression and said, if that's the case, then I won't stop you. But I'll personally accompany you around. If you run into danger. Tan Xiu waved his hand to interrupt him and said, you need to stay here to stabilize the overall situation, Division Commander Yang. You can mobilize the troops in time in case some lawbreakers attack the army. As for my safety, do you think I don't have any ability since I'm valued by that person? Yang Chuxiong was rendered speechless by Tan Xiu's rhetorical question. After observing Tan Xiu for a long time, he forced a smile and said, I'm afraid that something might happen. Even if that person, there's still Senior Tang. If Elder Tang gets angry, I won't be able to handle it. Tan Xiu said, since my grandpa dared to let me come here, he must have been prepared for trouble. So, he won't bother you. Yang Chuxiong finally compromised. How about this? I can choose not to follow you, but I'll send more people to follow you. Tan Xiu asked, is there anyone else in the army who can follow me at any time? Yang Chuxiong's breathing stagnated as he bitterly smiled and said, you're right. Everyone in the army has been infected by the virus. Not to mention acting as guards, it's already good enough that they don't have a fever. By the way, when you came, didn't all the members of the Phantom Special Combat Team come along? Put them in charge of protecting you. I really don't, Tan Xiu, it's decided. Otherwise I won't feel at ease. Tan Xiu's heart was filled with helplessness. He could not tell Yang Chuxiong that he was an immortal cultivator, nor could he tell him that the 11 subordinates he brought were all immortal cultivators. After learning about the threats from various forces, especially the Stygian Club, he realized that the ones he was about to face were not ordinary people. If he were to encounter the Stygian Club's assassins again, even 10 members of the Phantom Special Combat Team wouldn't be able to protect him. Even, it would become a burden instead. However, looking at Yang Chuxiong's firm look, Tan Xiu nodded with a headache. Half an hour later, after Yang Chuxiong temporarily found 4 black SUVs, Tan Xiu directly boarded them and left with Mo Au and the others. As for the Phantom Special Combat Team following behind, he pretended not to know about them. Where are we going, boss? Mo Au was in charge of driving and asked after leaving the military camp. Have you investigated it clearly? Tan Xiu asked. Where's the most central location of Mist Source Island? Mo asked. Zidane and Feng Yang went there personally and have investigated it clearly. It's more than 100 kilometers north of Mixed Summit City. Although the traffic in the 4 major cities has been opened, we still need to take a detour to avoid the mountains. It'll take us 4 or 5 hours to get there from here. We don't need to rush there if there's no Phantom Special Combat Team following us, Tan Xiu said. But now, let's go and have a look first. Which car are Zidane and Feng Yang in? In the car behind us, said Mo Au. Pull over and park the car. Shuesha, you and Zidane get off the car, said Tan Xiu. I have something to ask him. All right. Shuesha, who was sitting next to Tan Xiao, nodded. Quickly, the thin Zidane hurriedly sat next to Tan Xiao. After closing the door, he said, "Do you have something to ask me, boss?" "That's right. You and Feng Yang personally went to the most central mountain of Mist Source Island. Did you see the palace on the top?" asked Tan Xiao. "What's the situation over there?" Moo asked. "When we were far away, we observed it through binoculars. We can indeed see the palace. Although it's not magnificent, it's still majestic. However, when we were 600 meters away from the mountain, we were blocked by the fog. After another 100 meters or so, it was so dark that we couldn't even see our fingers in front of us. Moreover, there was a special air pressure that prevented us from going any further. In other words, even you can't go inside." Tan Xiao asked with a smile. "We can't go inside," said Zidane with a forced smile. "Although we don't know anything about arrays, we've been with you for a long time, boss, so we can tell that it's caused by arrays. It's already very good that we can go 100 meters inside the fog. If ordinary people were to go inside, I'm afraid they would be forced out by the air pressure inside after walking more than 10 meters inside." "Is that all you've found?" Tan Xiao thoughtfully asked. "That's only part of it, boss." Dan immediately shook his head. "We circled around the mountain and found a village near the south side of the mountain. There are 1,000 or 2,000 households living there. We also sneaked into the village to observe and found that there are foreign experts in the east, west, and south of the village. I don't know how they occupied several courtyards, but the defense is very tight. In addition, there are also people stationed on the north side of the mountain. There are nearly 100 people in total. They look like hired mercenaries. The leader is an old white man, and he's also a cripple." "Have you found out their identities?" asked Tan Xiao. "Apart from the more than 20 people stationed on the east side of the village, I screened them through the internet and finally determined that they are from the Mexican Mafia Reston organization. The leader is the second in command of the Reston organization, Zhenlei Duomo. She's a ruthless character. We haven't investigated the other 3 forces. There are too few sources of information here." "What are foreign gangsters doing on this island?" asked Tan Xiao with a frown. Dan didn't answer. He couldn't figure it out. In the early hours of the morning, the 2 cars of the Phantom Special Combat Squad members arrived at the Wolfpack City. If it was in the past, the streets on both sides of the streets of the Wolfpack City would be brightly lit, illuminating the surrounding buildings. But at this moment, it was different. The roads on both sides were dark. Although there was moonlight, it still looked quite dark. Only when they passed the intersection would the traffic lights be lit, radiating a little light to the road. However, usually at this time, the residents would have already turned off the lights and gone to sleep. But now, every house had lights on, and they could occasionally see the figures of the residents who hadn't gone to bed yet from the windows. "Boss, we're being watched." Moo, who was driving, suddenly had a cold light flash in his eyes. While observing the road ahead, he said vigilantly. Tan Xiao instantly released his divine sense, covering a radius of 300 or 400 meters. More than 300 meters behind the 6 cars, there was a car without lights following. On a tree on the side of the road, 2 men in black leather jackets were observing the convoy with binoculars. In addition, a young man on a roller skateboard was moving forward from the next street. His speed was very fast. In an instant, Tan Xiao could tell that the other party was definitely not an ordinary person. Even a Special Forces soldier couldn't match his speed with a roller skateboard. "Keep going and find the hotels in the Wolfpack City," Tan Xiao indifferently said while monitoring with his divine sense. "Boss, according to our understanding, all the hotels in the entire Mist Source Island have closed down and a small number of their staff have been fired. There are no people in those hotels at all," said Moo. "I understand the current situation. Even if they can't provide services, at least there are empty rooms," said Tan Xiao lightly. "Let's stay here tonight and continue our journey tomorrow morning." Alright. At the Grand Hyatt Hotel. It was the tallest hotel in the Wolfpack City with a total of 5 floors. Except for a small number of rooms with lights on, the rest were all dark. The glass door of the hotel had already been locked with chains and chains. Even the reception area on the first floor of the hotel was empty. After the 6 cars stopped, Mo easily opened the lock on the hotel's door. After pushing the door and entering, Tan Xiao and the rest stopped their pace with the faint light in the hall. "I'll find someone to book a room for us," said Mo after looking around. Tan Xiao raised his hand to stop him and lightly said, "Don't be anxious. Everyone, get ready for battle. We don't need to call them later. Some people will come down naturally." In a flash. Except for Mo, who stood vigilantly beside Tan Xiao, the other 10 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall instantly hid on both sides. They grabbed their sharp daggers and vigilantly watched the hotel's entrance and the corridor on both sides. Battle preparation? The members of the Phantom Special Combat Squad looked puzzled. They didn't find any special situation at all, so why would they need to prepare for battle? Yu Shuqing was puzzled, but he still quickly made a few hand gestures. As the bullets were loaded, they carried their guns and dispersed. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.